OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, bang on 7:30. You're very welcome along this Thursday morning. It's OTB AM. Ger and Shane with you all the way through until 10. If you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can also leave a comment on the YouTube stream, or you can get us at Off the Ball AM on Twitter. Shane, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are things?
This Grand Prix this weekend is something you're particularly interested in because it might be the end of the season, really.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, it's we were so blessed last season with the finale, albeit Lewis Hamilton was screwed over, let's be honest. But no, yeah, Max Verstappen is kind of he's just run away with it. But to put it into context, like,
does that make the season boring in a way, or are they able to make it interesting enough? Like,
I guess they can still make it interesting. There's still battles for the midfield, and then drivers who want to just win a race this season.
Relegation battle, those
essentially
race for Europe. It's what we all do when Man City are 14 points clear.
Yeah.
We're like, still pay attention. No, don't, honestly, come back.
Please keep
honestly,
watching.
It's going to be good.
But they're competing for. There's still 3 open seats for next year's grid. So there's current drivers and drivers not in the grid at the minute who are all competing for these seats, and the lucrative money involved as well. So yeah, I think it's still interesting. But like, only 16 drivers have ever been multiple world champions, and Verstappen is about to become the 17th, which shows just the tiny group that he is about to enter, and maybe how strong he is.
Yeah, okay. There's always a sneaking suspicion, though, that the best car wins and that the best driver doesn't always win, and that's kind of difficult. I mean,
yeah. But then you look at Red Bull, and Sergio Perez is in the same car as Max Verstappen, and yet he's so much more dominant. So you have to look at talent.
And do they not just fix it so Verstappen wins and he gets all the good stuff, and they experiment with your man's car and they're like, okay, well, Max is the champ, so sorry, buddy.
There's probably a lot of that happens in the garage, that certainly Max gets the benefit of everything. And
how much are they paying Max versus Perez?
I actually don't know the difference. I must look it up, but
it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. There's always a favourite child in each of the F1 grids, I would imagine.
The main point for the rest of the season is to try and build up hope that next year won't be the same.
Yeah, and next year has the draw of Las Vegas as well, a race on the Strip. Which,
oh yeah, are you going?
You know what? I'm tempted to go, although being in Vegas earlier in the summer broke my soul and my finances. So it's a type of place I always said I'd go only once.
Right, but then you're like, yeah.
No, I'm like, yeah. You know what? Maybe for Formula 1.
I'm a Raiders fan.
Yeah, I do it. So I'm going to be in a fast car later this morning.
What's the story with this?
Quite nervous about this. So I just reached out by the people of Alex Dunn. Alex Dunn, for anyone unfamiliar, he's a 16-year-old from Clonbelogue, I think, in Offaly, and tearing things up at the minute in Formula 4. So he's taking part in the Formula 4 Britain Championships and a couple of others as well.
What's Formula 4?
So essentially, as you go down the list, F1, F2, F3, F4, and the Formula 4 Championships as well, it's just the engine, essentially. The engine power is not quite as strong, obviously, in a Formula 4 car as a Formula 1 car. Alex, at 16, had the opportunity to test a Formula 3 car last week, or the week before. He's been chosen also in the last couple of weeks to take part in a Ferrari Academy next year as well. So this guy's on the radar of the top teams in the world, and he's racing against drivers maybe a couple of years older than him as well, and he's just about to clinch. He should next week, I think it is, in Brands Hatch, clinch the Formula 4 British Championship, and some of the drivers he's competing against there are being touted as future Formula 1 drivers. So there's no reason why Alex can't be. I think Eddie Irvine was maybe the last Irish Formula 1 driver, so we haven't had many at all, but it would be fantastic to see someone like Alex come through. I know his dad Noel Dunn was a former driver who's now his manager and agent, looking after his career and that sort of thing. But Alex seems to have a great head on his shoulders and well able to talk, and he's confident and cocky, which I think to get into a car like that you'd have to be.
Right, and so a car like that, it looks like a Formula 1 car. Yeah,
same single engine, open kind of chassis setup. So similar looking car, it's just less power, but still a strong car. And I'm going to be down in Mondello Park with him later this morning. We'll see it off the ball in the next week or two, but. Yeah, he's going to take me around in a couple of fast cars.
What cars?
They haven't told me what cars, but they've told me they will be extraordinarily fast, which has made me nervous.
Give you a speed?
Yeah, they didn't give me a speed, probably because I mightn't have shown up if they did. Like I've never done this. I've always said, I'd love to hop in a car with Tommy Byrne, the famed former driver from Drogheda, offered this to me once.
What?
He says I'll take you around Mondello at some point when I'm home.
Oh yeah. Well, you have to do it with him.
I have to do it with him.
He's mad.
Yeah, crash and burn.
He's the clip at the start of the show going, he just went nuts one night, started shooting the gun off.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like the Mexican team owner.
Yes.
And he was like, I'm having a good time here, but maybe it's time for me to leave.
Yeah, yeah. That was the moment where he had to leave.
The use of firearms, like, wantonly. It's like, I'm going to leave now.
I remember I spoke to Tommy over lockdown for an interview, and like, he's just a fascinating character. So yeah, going around with him would be different.
You got to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I know he lives in the States, but he does come home every now and again, maybe a couple times a year. So we'll have to get him in the studio and maybe take the two of us around Mondello Park and screen the lights out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's gonna be nerve-wracking. Yeah.
And what's the kid's name?
Alex Dunn.
Alex Dunn,
16-year-old.
And so he doesn't actually have a license yet, obviously.
No. So I'm going to hop in the car with a 16-year-old driver who knows no fear probably at 16, I'd imagine. So it'll just be the 29-year-old in the passenger seat who'll be slowly petrifying himself to death. Is
there a possibility it's like they've got a version of the Formula 4 where you can sit behind him and so?
I wouldn't have thought so.
A double-seater. They might just have it.
Well, they could do
sponsors and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I certainly wouldn't turn down the opportunity. I try anything, you know. So.
Mondello's quick.
Yeah, which and it's the home of Irish racing in many ways as well. And I've never been to Mondello Park,
there you go.
Ticking it off the list.
Well, enjoy.
I am an adrenaline junk. I like doing that type of thing, like skydives and mountain climbs and that sort of thing. I enjoy it. So it's not something I'm really dreading. It's more so the fear of the unknown, like how scary is it going to be.
So what's next on your list after this?
Myself and the friends had booked, we did obviously climb the highest point in the Rockies during the summer, Mount Elbert. We did Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago. We had Mount Elbrus booked, which is in the Caucasus, but it's in Russia. So the whole shitstorm essentially ticked that one off our list, so we can't really do that one anymore. But I don't know what I want to do next. It's probably going to be Everest Base Camp next year.
I remember MDMA saying, "Nah, you can't do that. It's too touristy." He did something else.
Yeah, you see,
he was doing media around something last year when he was away, and he panned the camera around, and it was like, "Nah, I'm not doing base camp because everybody does that."
Well, true. You see, I'm going to tack on. I want to do Island Peak, which is a mountain in the Himalayas as well. So you can do base camp and then go on and climb Island Peak, which is 6,100 meters, which will be an altitude record for me. Killy was 5,895, I think, in meters. So that would be probably the way to make it more less touristy and more enjoyable.
You can walk up Kilimanjaro though, can't you?
Yeah, in 6.5 days up and a day and a half down.
Is it 6.5 days up?
Yeah,
right.
Camping in tents.
Right.
Yeah, terrifying.
Is it terrifying?
Do you know what? The last night we started at midnight, and then you get to the summit at about 8 or 9 in the morning.
So you climb through the night.
Yeah, you climb through the night to avoid the heat of the next day. And like there was one point where our porters and guides were. We stopped on ice. We were kind of at altitude. Your brain isn't working too well, and there was a load of bags and tarps. And this is at altitude. It's obviously not a safe place to sleep, and freezing cold temperatures as well. And our guides just pulled back the tarp, and there was two local guides, porters, who had been carrying bags, got tired with the altitude, and just went to sleep.
Right.
And it was incredibly dangerous. They obviously had to be taken down the mountain, but just seeing that as you're on the way up,
right? Well, that could happen to us.
Yeah, it was kind of like an eye-opening experience. It was like, right, that this is kind of a little bit dangerous. So yeah, it was one of those things when you get to the top, when you're 45 minutes to an hour from the top, then you know you can do it. I got a nosebleed on the summit,
right,
which wouldn't be a good sign. So I was fairly swiftly taken down the mountain, by my own legs, of course. But I went down probably a little bit quicker than I otherwise would have. So yeah, scary but worthwhile.
Very good.
So it's not just a walk, Ger.
Okay.
It's a dangerous walk.
No, fair enough. Okay. 7:39 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, you can. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Surely it's time we get back to the Premier League, says Bobby Dwyer, with the biggest derby in the league on in the North London on Saturday morning.
Yeah, forget about the Manchester one on Sunday, obviously.
Morning, lads. Is it safe to come out now after Tuesday night? Asks Chris Cal. No, it's not. Under review. That's the back page headline on the Daily Mail this morning. FAI heat rising on Kenny after Nations League. Stephen Kenny must oversee a fast start with the Republic of Ireland in the Euro 2024 qualifiers next March or risk losing his job as manager, says Philip Quinn this morning. As is normal after a qualification, FAI CEO Jonathan Hill will conduct a review into the campaign, which saw Ireland finish with 7 points out of 18, a distant third to Scotland and Ukraine. Obviously, it's still our record total in the Nations League. The FAI board meets today, and Hill's review is expected to get the green light to kick off his assessment of an underwhelming campaign.
Yeah, well, the board are going to be meeting anyway today. So
yeah, and this is standard procedure. So I don't know. Does it? I mean, like if he gets hammered in the first 2 games, then yeah, if you're out early of the campaign, then they are going to ask him questions, and their questions will be asked about the job. But that's fairly standard stuff. So I don't think that this is ratcheting up the pressure any more than the pressure is there as the manager of the national team.
No, like the reality is it's next March to November. So like by this time next year, plus a couple of months, we're going to know essentially what our standing is in terms of the European qualifiers. Like Kenny Cunningham filled me with a little bit more optimism last night. He was saying obviously it wasn't a good enough performance, but the team will know that. Conor Howrahan's mistake was just one of those things that happens to a professional. He'll probably not do a pass like that for the rest of his career. But he did fill me with a little bit more optimism. Obviously we have to wait for the draw on Sunday week in Frankfurt, see who we get as third seeds. That could be nasty. You know, it could be a France and Italy. We could get England in there as well.
One of those big teams though always craps out.
Yeah,
there's always like just a weird cycle of football that one of the big teams craps out. Hopefully it'll be in our group as opposed to in another group, but you know.
Yeah, true. It's, as long as it's not Denmark and Wales and Georgia and these teams that we're absolutely sick to the teeth of playing against. I know Kevin De Bruyne was quoted last week before they played Wales saying, I feel like half of my international career has been against Wales, which is probably not far from the truth. So yeah, you kind of want a decent group. And I know a lot of Irish fans who travel over to, even Peter Brannock here from News Talk Breakfast, he goes to all the away games. So for those fans, it must be really interesting to watch those draws.
Cardiff, hooray.
I know. But then when you see Armenia,
our regular haunts. Oh, hello again. Great to see you. We love you.
Yeah, well, at least with an interesting draw, you get to see new places, and it's kind of like a cultural / geographical experience being an Irish fan as well, where you get to see some new countries. So from that perspective, I'd like to get some novel pairings. From Stephen's perspective, I don't know what the ideal draw is. I know he's heading over to the draw as well himself, but we wait with bated breath. But those couple of games in March are going to be the tell-all. Like, he couldn't lose his job now, but he could lose his job then.
Yeah. Denmark, Portugal, Belgium, Hungary, Switzerland and Poland are in pot 1. Pot 2 is France, Austria, Czech Republic, England, Wales, Israel, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Scotland, Finland.
There's some easy teams there. No, sorry, not easy teams. There's some reasonable teams there like Finland and Bosnia who you wouldn't mind getting a second seed.
Yeah. Pot 4 has Georgia. You could do without Greece, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Luxembourg, Azerbaijan, Kosovo, Bulgaria, Faroe Islands and North Macedonia. So there's a wide variety of teams in that group.
And some familiar teams as well. Yeah,
I would expect us to be able to get 6 points off the Faroes, but against Georgia, you'd be not quite sure. Yeah, Luxembourg have obviously improved quite significantly, and it's not great. And then pot 5 has Slovakia, Northern Ireland, Cyprus, Belarus, Lithuania, Gibraltar. Remember we were
remember those guys
scraping past the mighty Gibraltar twice. Estonia, Latvia, Moldova, Malta, and then there's another pot 6 which we may or may not need, depending on what.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be exciting. It's going to happen very quickly.
Well, it's more enjoyable. We were saying this yesterday. Like, I actually like going to Ireland matches now. Whereas for a time there, I still went, and yet it just wasn't. You weren't expecting anything. Well, at least we got 5 goals the other night. I know a lot of people in the comments mightn't enjoy that, but the reality is these games are better to watch.
You know, I'm sure, like any good board, the FAI board are saying, what's your succession plan?
Yeah.
What is the succession plan here? And I don't know what the succession plan is. Is it automatically Jim Crawford, or is it automatically John O'Shea? Is that what we're talking about? Like, John O'Shea would have a lot of support if he was to be the next manager, but it's very early in the cycle.
Yeah.
For him, wouldn't it be great? Pardon me, for him to go off and get some experience, even within the FAI? I don't know what his plan is.
Was Keith Andrews, is that too close to the current tenure? Maybe.
I don't know. I mean,
Stephen Bradley,
like
future Ireland manager at some point, you'd imagine.
I don't know. Again, like what they did with Stephen Kenny was what a good organisation should do, and because John Delaney made the decision, it's like automatically, must be bad. But getting Stephen Kenny into the system and giving him some understanding of the talent pool coming through, and then saying you're going to be the future manager, like controversial and all as it was, it's what England did with Southgate, and they've been rewarded.
Yeah, we shirk away sometimes from talking about succession plans, and I know from Stephen Kenny's perspective, maybe he doesn't want to think about a succession plan because that's him thinking about the end of his time as Ireland manager.
It's not his job.
The FAI should have a plan in place.
It's the board and the executive's job to do that, and I'm sure they do. But like, who are the names on that list? Are they just mates of Jonathan Hill from his time in England?
Well, that's the thing as
Like,
well.
are they? Or who's on the list, you know? Who's credibly on the list? Like, I haven't seen anybody who's like, oh, he can't do it, he's not gonna... Give me the alternative then.
Yeah, because the days of hiring a big name foreign manager who just comes in with no knowledge of it, like the Trapattoni thing is not going to happen again. That was just that was a one-off, you'd imagine, where someone comes in, at least Mick McCarthy and Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane, and had a semblance of understanding as to the players and maybe a setup of how Ireland often play football. Not that they have to stick to that, but yeah, I'd like to see, and we don't even have to be told of the plan. The fans and the media don't necessarily need to be told what their plan is, but as long as in the background, behind the scenes, the FAI have some sort of plan, because obviously if Stephen Kenny loses the first 2 games of the qualifiers next March, he will be under pressure. So these plans can come around quicker than people expect.
On the other side, if he was to win those 2 games, then the pressure eases. Like, that's football. Like, we're in that situation now where that's very realistic. Right, it is 7:46. Kathleen McCabe is with us. Kathleen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, guys. Doing well.
Picture on the back page of Katie McCabe. Ajax 0, Arsenal 1. This is the Mail as well. McCabe's Gunners on a roll. It was a relatively controversial game.
It was quite controversial. Before the game started, basically the Arsenal staff discovered that the goals were 10 centimetres smaller than they should be. So they were obviously not happy with that. And then the same thing happened at half-time, where Ajax tried to make them smaller again. And then towards the end of the second half, they also had Beth Mead coming off with a pretty nasty concussion, it looked like. The Ajax player both went for the ball. Ajax player was very, very badly timed and just basically headbutted Beth Mead. And when Arsenal tried to bring on a concussion sub, they were initially told that they could, and then they were told they couldn't. So they had to play with just 10 players for it ended up being about 10 minutes because there was so much extra time after the injury.
Right, and do we, why weren't they allowed to bring on? Do we know why they weren't allowed to bring on?
Well, the thing was, the assistant ref told them that they could, so they just presumed that they would be able to. And then as they were bringing on Lena Hershig, the ref was like, actually, no, sorry, you can't. So I don't think they even know themselves. It's not actually necessary in the Women's Champions League at the moment. It is in the WSL.
Okay.
You're able to bring on 2 concussion subs per game.
So the rules haven't caught up yet?
No, not at all. But it was unfortunate because, Arsenal did the right thing. They took Beth Mead off straight away. Jonas Eidevall said after the match there was absolutely no question about them not taking her off, even though that did reduce them to 10 players. I think he was mostly angry at the fact that they weren't allowed to substitute, but also that he wasted the time that he could have been talking to his players about how to set up to defend against 11 players. He spent that time preparing Lena Hershig to come on, especially when the game was so in the balance. It was 1-0, it was 2-2 on aggregate. There was a good few opportunities for Ajax to level it up, which would have sent it to extra time and penalties.
Right, so this is qualifier stage, not group stage?
No, group stage draw is on Monday. Which is another thing a lot of English managers are kind of annoyed at, the fact that they do have to go through these qualifiers, even though they do come in the top 3 of the league.
Okay. How did Katie McCabe play?
She played well. She was played on the right wing, which she was also there for, I think it was the last 20, 30 minutes of the North London derby at the weekend. And she's been playing there a bit more. I think it's when they don't start Beth Mead, they tend to bring her there if Beth Mead comes off. She played well. She was very much a classic Katie McCabe. Arsenal were pressing quite high on Ajax, which was a lot more successful than what they did the first time around. And she was, particularly towards the end of the game, she put in some really, really important tackles to make sure that it did stay 1-0 to Arsenal. Okay.
Is this playing on the right thing good for her development in the long run? Is it something that actually makes her a better footballer? Is this some way for her to be more effective, cutting in on the left?
I think, we were talking to the legendary manager of Arsenal, Vic Akers, on Friday, and he was saying he wanted to see Katie McCabe play there a bit more. I don't think there's any harm in it. I think the more versatile she is, the more it suits Ireland better. It gives us more options. I don't see us changing her position around all that much. The main thing with Katie McCabe in Ireland is how high up the pitch she's going to play rather than on which side. But I do think it is good for her development in general to have that versatility.
Do Ajax have a little goalkeeper? Is that the problem?
Well, I love this shithousery. This is fantastic.
How do they do they just dig a deeper hole? How do you cheat like that?
It's just the fact that they tried it at halftime as well, and that the Arsenal management were literally
just,
out
like,
on a very
ignore
unsteady
us.
ladder, like trying to measure it with literally just like a ruler, looking at it, seeing if it was the right size. It was absolutely mental, because I saw it happening on the live stream and I was like, this is a bit weird that they're checking the goal. And then I saw all the English journalists that were over there being like, you're not going to believe this, but they've tried to do it again at halftime.
For a big club like Ajax, like, it can't be by mistake.
No.
It's got to be.
No, I mean, they should be thrown out for this.
Not at all.
Or is there like are they within the, it needs to be this height and it's a range of heights?
I think the goalposts have to be an absolute set height, don't they?
Yeah, no, it's a
Not
set
like the pitch.
height that it has to be. And I mean, well, they're already out because they haven't qualified, but part of me
banned for
kind of
next
loves
season.
the fact that there is like just that little bit of niggliness. I kind of want more of that. I want more of the ridiculous stories and the more of people trying to get things through, or I don't know, just the general hatred between teams. I'm like, bring it on. This is great.
All right, Kathleen, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Right, so Arsenal are through to the group stage is next and group stage draw is next.
Yeah, group stage draw is on Monday.
Okay, good
I
stuff.
think it's around 12 or 1 o'clock.
Okay, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Jess McFadyen is with us in just a second. Keith Wood is next at 8:10. Sports Page is at 8:30. Sports News at 8:40. Katie O'Brien, fresh from meddling at the rowing, is going to join us at 8:50. Cian O'Connor is going to join us at 9:10 to talk to us about Limerick versus Real Madrid. Yes, that's correct. And then Sit Down and Shut Up is the documentary. We're going to play it out for you today. It's a brilliant story of the time that Real Madrid came to play Limerick, and it actually took place in Lansdowne Road. We'll get you the full details on that a little bit later. But right, all this week, an incredible opportunity to combine sports and leisure with a visit to LA on America's West Coast. You and two friends could be jetting out with multi-award-winning Cassidy Travel on direct flights from Dublin with Aer Lingus on the 1st of December to spend 4 nights in the 4-star hotel, the Wayfarer, in downtown LA to take in the Rams against the Seahawks in the NFL. To be in the hat for this prize, follow @Cassidy Travel on Twitter. Make sure you retweet our competition post as well, because that's how we're going to know that you entered. It's all with thanks to Cassidy Travel, your one-stop sports travel shop. Sports and travel, a perfect match. You can visit CassidyTravel.ie for more. It's a good prize. Make sure you enter. Get on to @OffTheBall on Twitter. Right, we're turning our attention to Formula 1 now, ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. And to chat about it, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Jess McFadyen of the Motorsport Network. Jess, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, very good, guys. It's a little early for me usually, but I'm happy to be here.
Okay, great. I'm glad that we managed to get you then. We were talking a little bit earlier on about this. It could be over, that the race could actually be over for the title this weekend. Is it a little bit early? Is there a little bit of disappointment about that? Or is this just like we need to sit back and enjoy the fact that we have an absolute superstar in our hands?
I guess it depends if you are a Max Verstappen fan or not. But I think, we know ultimately he's going to be champion this year. It is just a case of when, not if. And mathematically, yes, he could do it this weekend. It kind of depends on, as you would imagine with when there's maths involved, it depends on where Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez finish this weekend, or indeed if they finish at all. It is a street track. It is twisty, windy, and we do tend to see quite a few crashes and incidents, and people make mistakes around here. So, but equally, so could Max. So it is a bit up in the air as to whether he can do it. I have a feeling it probably is going to run a little bit longer, but it is kind of just staving off the inevitable, really. But that is it. And you're right, it's been amazing to watch Max. I guess not to bring up last year, but there is an asterisk next to his first championship. This one there definitely isn't at all.
The Singapore Grand Prix offers a very specific challenge to the drivers. Shane was talking earlier on about the weight loss that they get. What are the conditions actually going to be like for them this weekend?
It looks pretty harsh. There's storms predicted all weekend, which obviously shake things up anyway, but it is really hot and humid as well. Weight loss is a massive deal. We've just done a piece on Autosport as to why the Singapore Grand Prix is the toughest challenge for drivers, and a lot of it is to do with the climate, but also the track. The track is extremely demanding. It's a bit like It's a bit Monaco-esque. A little bit more room for overtaking than Monaco, but it is like full concentration, full commitment, but in, up to 70-80% humidity. So it's really hot, sticky, and if it's going to be wet, will we get running? That is always the question, because when I last checked, obviously you can see I'm not in Singapore right now, but when I checked with people on the ground this morning especially, there was almost like monsoon level rain. So it's going to be an interesting one. So it's definitely one to look out for. But yeah, it's one of my favorite races, and we've not been there since 2019, so it's the first time back since then. The drivers, haven't really got a reference point. It was a while ago. Obviously, they'll be doing sim work and lots of prep, but yeah, it's a proper challenge for the drivers.
I know a lot of people just kind of talk about these pandering Formula One drivers who are well paid and got a nice lifestyle, it has to be said, but that heat, especially on race day in Singapore, like when you consider the heat of the engine around them as well, and then even the night temperatures in Singapore, which are fairly significant, like there are a couple of hours in the car, they've only a certain amount of access to water as well, so it's not an easy physical endurance test for them specifically in Singapore.
No, this is the one where you see them jump out the car and they are literally dripping in sweat, and if you're wearing a white race suit, then it's almost see-through. So it really, really is challenging. And I think that's something that maybe holds Formula One back in terms of perception from audiences, is that we don't actually get to see, not like football or rugby or anything like that, where you actually see the physical prowess of the athletes. They're cocooned in a car and you don't get to see quite how much they are physically having to fight through each lap. And they're doing it for a long time. Now, I am by no means a racing driver, but recently I went out to America and I learned how to drive a Formula 4 car, which is a few levels down from a Formula 1 car. But even, I did 3 days of that, which probably at a time was a maximum of probably 20 laps ever at once. I was done. I was finished. It was so like the obviously I don't train quite as well as they do, but it was genuinely tiring, and to keep that level of focus and concentration across an entire Grand Prix weekend, and especially during a Grand Prix when it is a street circuit like Singapore, it's super physical, and definitely not anybody could just jump in and do that. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where we don't really get to see it, but Singapore, you will get a sense of just how draining it is. And you mentioned water. A lot of them this year aren't carrying water bottles on the car. So, and that's partly to do with weight saving. For some drivers, it's a choice. They actually don't like drinking during a race, but when they're losing as much fluid as they are around Singapore, their hydration is going to be key. All
right, that's really interesting. We were talking about this a little bit earlier on, but Shane is due to go around Mondello Park, which is our fastest track in Ireland here today, and he's a little bit concerned about it. How fast did you get into an F4? What speed do you get up to?
We were over 100 miles an hour. Which I guess, like, again, compared to, I don't know, maybe some people here are going, wow, we do that on the motorway safely, I hope. But when you're in an open cockpit, single-seater, where the suspension is stiff as anything, you can feel every bump in the road. You can feel the G-forces. Like, when I was going down the straights, and full throttle, my helmet, it was slightly lifting. You could feel the forces kind of moving you around. It definitely feels a lot faster than 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, it wasn't like super speed, but it was quick enough. Let's just say that it was quick enough. It's
funny, in your line of work, Jess, I guess it probably gives you more of a appreciation for the Formula 1 drivers, if I'm right in saying that. Like when you get behind the wheel of any fast car, Formula 4 included, like there has to be some element of fear, surely.
Yeah, there definitely was, especially when you looked at the bill. If you crashed the car, that was enough to kind of put the fear of God in you. But yeah, no, 100%. I think a lot of people, and especially like a lot of like people that make comment on drivers for a living, like I do, you get criticism. Well, you're not a driver. How would you know? How can you possibly comment? So I love the fact that I got to go off and do that, even if it is quite a few worlds removed from what these guys are doing out in Singapore. You definitely do get a whole level of appreciation. And I genuinely think my key takeaway from my short motorsport like driver career was the focus element, the ability to keep your brain needing to operate at that level, at that speed for that long. It was really hard. By the end of the last day, we were really lucky. We got told, you're going to make mistakes in this session. It's your last session. You're tired, but you're pumped full of adrenaline, so you don't feel it. It was sloppy, to say the least. Like, my last session was definitely the worst of all of the time I was spent in the car.
Which doesn't make any sense. Like, logically, that doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to get better as you go along. You're going to get more experience. You get more used to it.
Yeah.
But actually, the physical toll that it takes on you is really interesting. I do wonder. So, we've obviously, we've been talking non-stop about how the Netflix series has managed to popularise the sport and bring in new fans. I do wonder if the next wave is actually going to be the good quality simulators that you get, where you can sit in and experience those G-forces and actually begin to be overwhelmed by the experience of being in a car. Like, so I was in Mondello this week doing laps in the BMW, and it was about as fast, maybe 130, 140 kilometers an hour, and everybody's like, oh yeah, what's the big deal? But actually, when you're on a track and it's in a straight line and you press the button and you're told there's somebody telling you what to do, that's how they're holding your hands, but like your head goes back.
Yeah.
And it's not an experience that you get when you're on the motorway as you slowly go from 80 to 90. Okay, whatever the speed limit is. I could have stopped there. And but it was the first time ever that I really understood that, like, imagine doing this for 90 laps. Braking at the very last second. And then your body goes forward and you've got to roll with it. It's like totally unexpected. And I think that might be the next bit where you suck more fans in.
I think so. It's so hard. Some drivers talk about it because some drivers absolutely hate the sim because you don't get what they call they call it feeling it through their butt. Like, they can feel the car moving through the bottom of their body, and you don't get that in a sim. Like, you can't feel the tarmac underneath you, and you don't quite get that same sense. And a lot of drivers are intuitive drivers, so obviously they know how to drive a car, they know the theory behind braking and the levels of grip and stuff like that, but so much of it is through feeling in the car, and you don't get that on sims. You do, as you say, like, they're getting so much more advanced with the ability to almost generate G-force like situations. But I don't think there will always be a level removed. As you said, like, sitting in a car, even if it's a closed cockpit, you get such a different feeling. And I guess there's always going to be the element of when you're in it and it's real and you really could crash. That's a whole new level of fear and feeling. So, yeah, I mean, gaming has got so many people into motorsport. So I think you're right. I think it is definitely a next step, but there will always be that little gap.
It's funny, Jess. It kind of makes me think as well about the braking zones. Like, when you're on a track for the first time and you're trying to work out where the braking zones are. Like, I saw a great clip it's probably an older clip now, of Lewis Hamilton talking about when he was a young kid, his dad would take him out to tracks, and his dad would stand on the corner watching the other drivers go first, and he'd watch the fastest driver and say, okay, that's where the fastest driver has braked here, so you have to brake here, a metre beyond. And like, obviously
no pressure.
And Lewis said basically he would spin out and crash the first few times, but eventually got to the point where he was comfortable braking a metre later than even the fastest driver. So, and it's similar even with Singapore this weekend, Jess. Like, I noticed, like, I think 4 of the drivers are in Singapore for the first ever time. Like, if I'm right in saying Schumacher, Latifi, Tsunoda, and Zhou Guanyu as well. I've never raced in Singapore, so it must be quite a scary experience for a driver coming to a track like Singapore, and your first time racing in it is in Formula One.
Yeah, but I guess this is what these guys gear up for. Pardon the pun, but this is what they live for, and I think they know that Singapore is a really interesting driver track. So I think they're probably. I mean, the problem will be is whether they like racing in the wet or not. You'll drive. Some drivers love it. Some drivers don't mind. Other drivers hate it. And with the levels of water that we're talking about, coupling all of that together is a massive challenge for a novice driver around the course. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see which of those newbies to Singapore will do better. And will I mean, I love it. I love a wet race because I think you really do see that next level of greatness in drivers. It separates the good from the great drivers, basically, when you get to see them racing in the wet. especially around a track like Singapore.
As long as it's not as wet as Spa last year, but we won't talk about that. Let's move on from that one. Like Singapore, Jess, is one of those places where so many of the races over the years have been fairly historic. Like I'm thinking, was it the 2008 race where Nelson Piquet was told to crash on purpose to essentially help Fernando Alonso to win the title?
Yes, it was the scene of Crashgate. It's yeah, it's kind of a sensitive one for people, but yeah, it was. I think I heard you talking about cheating earlier on, but this was out and out cheating, and they were caught. So this was Renault. Renault wanted Fernando Alonso to win the race, and so told Alonso's teammate to crash at a particular spot around the track that meant that people couldn't come into the pit lane. And so it basically shuffled Alonso up the order, and he ended up at the front of the pack and went on to win the race. And it wasn't until the next season when Alonso's teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. was kind of kicked out of the team that he then ran to the FIA with a testimony saying we cheated that race. And yeah, it shook F1. It was a really big scandal. So it took a little bit of time for Renault pulled out of Formula One after that because they lost their title sponsor as well, and it was all down to this one element of cheating. So it sent shockwaves through Formula One. So yeah, Singapore was host to that. We also obviously had the famous I think it was 2017 when the two Ferraris and Max Verstappen crashed. The leading three crashed out at the very first corner. So there's been so much drama around Singapore. It is a place for both great racing. We saw Lewis Hamilton's 2018 qualifying lap, which is still heralded as one of the greatest qualifying laps that we've ever seen in Formula One. So yeah, Singapore has a lot of excitement around it, a lot of drama. And hopefully I genuinely am just hoping that it's not rained off, because this race, as I said, is one of my favourites.
Two last questions from me. One is about Shane was talking to us about the number of sprint races is going to be increased next season. I don't really understand exactly how they impact the position on the starting grid. What is it uniform across the season? How do they work?
No, so I imagine that at this point we need to decide if we were going to have sprint races as part of the full weekend lineup or not. But it turns out we're gonna test out 6 next year. So that means for those 6 race weekends, their format is slightly different. So instead of qualifying on a Saturday, we have qualifying on a Friday, and that then sets the grid for the sprint. And then the winner, basically the order of finish for the sprint sets the grid order for the race. So it does impact a race weekend, and we've seen the races that we have had sprints over the past 2 years. We have seen them impact the results in terms of either drivers understand a bit better what they have to do in the race because they've had a kind of a racing simulation. We know then what the tyres, how they're going to act. So it informs race strategy. So they do impact the full Grand Prix weekend. So jury's still out for me. I haven't quite decided if I like them or not, because they clearly do impact, as I was mentioning, they do impact the racing. They have brought drama, but people are still a little bit out as to whether or not it's the right thing to do and whether we should just stick to our usual Grand Prix format. So they're gonna. The idea is that they're gonna bring it to races where overtaking is possible, because the whole point, the element of it as well, is to give fans more racing action across a weekend.
Yeah.
If you do that at a track where you don't get overtaking, then you're just kind of
It's pointless.
Re-emphasising that there's no overtaking around this track. So that's the idea anyway. So we're getting 3 more than we've had this year. This year we're having 3.
Okay.
So next year we're having 6. Yeah.
Okay, so it's coming slowly, and it seems like that's how change works. And so maybe that preempts the answer to this question, which has come in on YouTube from Steve Lane. Would Formula One benefit from a US-style playoff system? The way the final 10 races or so would be between the top 8 or 12, etc. It's a similar experience in NASCAR for the drivers. And then he goes on to say the recent Texas race was 130 Fahrenheit in the car for the drivers. Big respect to the F1 guys for the endurance they're about to go through. I suspect if there's any reticence about introducing the sprint, the notion of taking the top 8 or 12 and turning that into a playoff is a bit of a no-go for now.
I think it's already a complex sport, right? It's already got so many different levels of, well, yes, but I find myself having to say that a lot. If somebody asks me, is this the rule? And I have to go, yeah, but if this happens and that changes. So I wouldn't quite go as far as say I'm a purist, because I do think that the sport needs to evolve as time goes on. But I'm not in favour of anything quite like that. I mean, Bernie Ecclestone, when he was in charge, came up with some weird and wacky ideas to try and shake F1 up. Most of them were put to one side, but I think especially when we had a season like last year, I feel like it would. Yeah. The whole point is that we want it to be as close as we had last year.
Yeah. No, fair
regardless
point.
Regardless of outcome. But
Jess,
yeah, I think I'm saying no.
Jess, great stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thank you.
Jess McFadyen there. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It is 10 minutes past 8. Do you want to spend the night with Roddy Collins? We've teamed up with Penguin Ireland to celebrate the release of Roddy's new autobiography, The Rodfather, with a special night at the Sugar Club in Dublin on Thursday, October the 13th. Richie McCormick will be joined on the night by the Rodfather himself, the book's ghostwriter Paul Howard, and some very special guests. It promises to be a cracking night. Check out thesugarclub.com for tickets. Very limited number of tickets for the night. And you can get Roddy to sign the book as well. We're live with Keith Wood after the break.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Zebo going on his own. He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Carberry gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
12 minutes past 8. Keith Wood, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. You sent me a text yesterday about the changes coming in Rugby League, Super League. Was this like a thing that to signify that these are problems that every sport is having around relegation and finance, or was it this might be a way out of rugby's problems?
Well, it was a little bit of both, actually. I looked at it and I was interested in some of the terminology that was used, which we haven't kind of heard as much here, which was, well, first we need to figure out how many games we want the players to play, and then we need to incorporate having with the Super League Cup and the international matches into it. And that just seemed like almost like a different way of looking at rugby union, the mind rugby league. And I know rugby league is far less complicated in terms of that it isn't a huge international game. They're big games when they happen, but it isn't central to the funding model. And rugby league have gone onto a strategic partnership with IMG to try and see if they can maximise it. And for me, I just like it's the concept. It's how you think, not what you think. And it's that idea that you could stop and take a breath and say, okay, can we get something that's really fit for purpose?
Yeah, I mean, it's largely what we were talking about at the start of COVID, when we were doing these deep dives on what the future of the game should be about. And at one point, I remember us being particularly optimistic that it felt like the mood music was suggesting that there was going to be a global calendar agreed, and then whatever happened, that all just disappeared, and we've been left with the dog's dinner that we have at the moment.
Yeah, like dog's dinner is a tough way of looking at it, but it seems like an expanded version of the game from pre-professional, and there's a constant drive to make rugby bigger, and I think too often we try and follow what soccer is as a global sport, and try to follow and presume that you're going to get the same number of people to go and watch it. But rugby's complicated and is made increasingly complicated by law changes, and they're all made for the right reason. But At some stage, you'd say, God, we'd never really have this. Would we start some other way? You know, and I look at it. I go back to my first year in the Ireland squad, which was in '92, which was a very different time. But it was 5 nations, so you had 4 matches in the spring. You had a summer tour, not every year, but most years you might have 1 or 2 matches, international matches then, and you might have 1 autumn international, maybe 2. Now that's gone to 10 or 12 all the time. The games have become infinitely harder, more physical. The game, not always is better, but some of it is just phenomenal. So we saw in the summer that the game can be magnificent. So that's not a dog's dinner, but it's the constant toll that seems to be taking, and the extension of the year to being the bones of 52 weeks of the year. I mean, it's relenting. So
let's layer in now a global club World Cup on top of the situation that we have at the moment, and say, no, you're going to have the same available players, and actually you're going to have fewer available players because finances are coming down. We're seeing the club game in England on the verge of collapse, with a couple of badly run clubs perhaps having a knock-on impact on everything else. You know,
I don't know that it's necessarily badly run as in clubs. I think as a model in England in particular, it runs at a loss, always. So every team pretty much runs at a loss. I think Exeter hit positive a couple of times a few years ago, but their owner put 16 million into them in the last couple of years, I think was the number. It requires a huge amount of money to keep going, and there's a high level of frustration that you promote players to play for England and then they don't get to play for their club often enough, and there's a frustration for that. So I think the idea of making that league either smaller or having less games in it, be that 2 pools of 8 or whatever way you do it, makes an awful lot of sense, because it then means that the top players can be seen to play for the club. I mean, I think if you put it to the soccer view, and if you said that if you were playing international soccer and you couldn't then play for Man United, I think Man United fans would be pretty upset, and I think that's the nature of it. And it's trying to find some level of a balance in the game, and the balance just isn't there yet because of the pressures that they're under. So I think there's elements of blame and fault, but actually the reality of this is that the amount of money that's available for the game is very large in France. It's pretty large in the UK, and it's still not making money. And it's decent in Ireland because of the structure that we have with the IRFU. But elsewhere, it's very vulnerable, So, you have to try and make certain that you're getting your top players being seen and playing, and maybe not playing them too much. So, look, I think at the start of COVID, we said that, this was a chance. This could be an inflection point for the history of the game as to how it could change and become fully sustainable. So it has to be sustainable financially. It also has to be sustainable for its players and people. And I think the harsh reality of commercialism and finance and the knock-on effect that COVID had has maybe accelerated the pressure that all these clubs and the game is under.
Keith, it's interesting as well, even away from the professional game. I was reading a good piece in I think it was in the Times this morning from Owen Slott. Diehards might not like it, but this change could save the sport. He was talking about community clubs as opposed to professional clubs in England. I guess being instructed potentially by the RFU to introduce different forms of rugby, whether it be touch rugby or walking rugby, to offer alternatives to the 15 game. What's your take on that? I know it's not an identity crisis for rugby in England, but it's an important question to be answered over here as well, keeping people at a community level involved in rugby and interested, I guess.
Look, I've been a fan of that for years. I mean, and I know we discussed that in the past. And I think rugby is an incredible game. Actually, touch rugby would have been the start and end of the vast majority of the training sessions we did over in Quins back in the day. And there's a bit of joy and fun in that without the hefty contact. So I do think more people will get into it. It's like some of the tag rugby, I was never quite fan of because it was a bit different. You have a different movement to touch rugby. But actually, if you get yourself into a position where you have this absolute skills-based handling element, I think that is essential. I've also been keen on having some of the changes between law changes that happen at professional rugby not necessarily having to be put into the community game. I do think that there's elements of those things that can be taught after the fact if needed, and if players progress up to the professional game. And I know that makes it a little bit hard, but I don't think that's a problem. I think you want people to play it and enjoy it and be safe doing so. And if we do want more people playing, I think if you have people playing touch rugby, I think they still get every part of the rugby apart from the big smashing, and we think that the big smashing is a bit of an issue at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we can come back to this because it is pushing the rock up the hill. The actual performance on the pitch. Let's start with Munster. It's been a slow start to the season. I mean, I made the point that I don't think we should get too carried away just yet. And at the same time, there's always a little kind of bit of concern when you lose your 2 games, and you're the team that is the one that gets beaten for the first time in a decade, and lets the opposition win their first game in 18 months or however long it was. So Dragons was one of those performances that doesn't look good on the record books, but at the same time the main players are just back. It was the first time that many of them were getting any game time. Should we be concerned yet?
I think you should be concerned over the performance. How concerned we'll see in the next few weeks, actually. And look, I think there's a change happening there. I think they're working unbelievably hard from what I hear. Training-wise, it is incredibly taxing. And whether it's the fact that they may have taken a couple of these games for granted and always presumed that they were going to get the win, and sometimes that can leak in, and especially if you're pushing it very hard. I think Munster are trying to make a change, and we're not seeing it enough. But what we are seeing is a little bit of lack of certainty for the players on the field because of the change. I just noticed in the Dragons game, like I thought Ben Healy played pretty well, but he also played quite deep because they're trying to make certain that they get the ball through the hands enough, but they became a little bit lateral with it, and that just takes time. And I think once you get all the players on the one page, once they get sharp enough from their training, I still think there'll be hiccups during the season, but I do think that change will take a period of time to go. So am I worried looking at it? No, I was just disappointed watching the performance. I thought it was poor. I thought the handling was poor. I thought the discipline was poor, and they need to sort those things out. And there are things that can be sorted out pretty quickly. The only issue is you see these as a couple of easier games. This game coming up at the weekend would be considered an easier game. And then you have a flurry of really tough games. So yeah, I think it's hard. It's a very hard start when you don't get those wins. And I think Munster might have relied on the fact that actually if they got 3 wins off at the start, they could deal with some of the tougher games as they came along. But look, I still see there is a bit of progression, though at times they drift back into old habits, but it'll take a while to move on.
That's the thing, isn't it? That actually what we're trying to do is see the trends evolving that we're going to hopefully witness over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, that this isn't going to be a switch has been flicked and all of a sudden Munster are the finished article. It doesn't work like that in sport.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't work for a side that pretty much kicked all its possession last year, so you're trying to make a change in that. It's going away from things that have been almost bred into the team for the last period of time. And there's lots of comments of people would say that that's the way Munster always played. It wasn't. And Munster often integrated well. It's trying to get that balance right. And the balance for me has been wrong for the last while. I just thought it was too conservative too often. So you're now stuck in that mindset. It takes a while to get out of it. So I think it's a tough job for Graham Rowntree, and it's tough when you have an expectation that players will react quickly. I think they are trying to react actually, but I just don't think that I won't say attitude, but the attention to that detail under pressure is good enough. So I think Munster will be under pressure for a while, but I would expect them to dig themselves out of it. I don't know what that means, but I don't know whether that means for this year or for the next year. But it's the start of a change, and that's something that's we've all said has been needed.
I saw Donnacha O'Callaghan at one point, Keith, after the game saying, you really have to blame players, and you can't always go to the coaching ticket after a performance like that of Munster's last weekend. And even just funnily reading in this morning's paper, one of the papers had a reference to the Tuesday morning murder ball in Munster trainings under Declan Kidney and Axel Foley, where after a poor performance there used to be a wake-up call, let's say, after the weekend. So how do players in this Munster team be made aware that last week's performance wasn't acceptable? Like, does there have to be a kick up the ass in training this week, or what way would you approach it?
No, I don't think there has to be. Do you honestly think any player doesn't know when they haven't played well, or a team doesn't know when they haven't played well? There isn't a head in the sand idea. I think it becomes difficult at different times when you're making a big change as to wanting to do something and then falling back into times past. And even if you look at Ireland under Andy Farrell after Joe Schmidt, it took a period of time for a lot of those things to happen. And actually Ireland played in the same manner as they did under Joe Schmidt for about 7 or 8 games, and it took a while for that to change. It takes time. And but I think the players are fully aware, and the players want to win and they want to be excited by it. And it's been slow. I mean, it's frustrating for fans, frustrating for all of us, watching, because you want to see them play well. But I think it takes a long period of time. And actually, if I was to give a better idea, and I know it's done for different reasons and done in a different way, but when you look at the way Ulster have progressed over the last number of years, and you look at the manner in which they're playing now, they couldn't do that a few years ago. Now, you might have said they didn't have the players, and maybe they had to develop players to be that way. That could be the case for Munster as well. But you watch Ulster playing today, and they're a joy to watch.
Yeah, so and that has to be a part of the template for Munster into the future. One of the other templates, obviously, is what's happened at Leinster. Lancaster's going, that's been confirmed. I think nobody at Leinster or Leinster supporters or even in Irish rugby will begrudge him the opportunity to go and be the lead at a club like Racing. He absolutely deserves that opportunity. For Leinster, what kind of an opportunity is this? Where should they be looking for the next Stuart Lancaster? Should they be looking internally to promote somebody and say, right, that's the opportunity for anybody who's involved in our coaching team now? Or should they be looking globally and saying, this is an opportunity for us to get another world-class coach to come in and again change the course of Leinster's future?
I think they should be doing both, and that's not sitting on the fence. I think they need to look at all their options. I think they're in a very strong position, the strongest position of any side in Ireland, in that they have an incredibly well-honed, talented group of players with a steady stream of talent coming through the school system, a lot of which the players are playing for Ireland, but there is a huge amount of strength and depth. So when those players drift off, the squad that the new coach will coach will be, like, a lot of them are internationals as well. So I think it's a plum job. And look, when they went for Lancaster, he was persona non grata. The fact that Leinster searched him out with Leo Cullen, with Johnny Sexton, having conversations with him, I think they gauged him as a guy first. I mean, I don't know Stuart very well, but I've met him a good few times, and we've had some pretty decent conversations over his mindset. He was hurt and pretty vulnerable coming out of the English setup, and he's mentioned that in a couple of things lately. But his mindset is a coach. It was an academy coach first and foremost. It was developing players. The thing that sets him tick is developing players. I mean, he's spent a long time, 6 or 7 years in Leinster. It's about time for him, I suppose, to go back to the top job, to the number one job again. Though he'll have it difficult because he's been able to work pretty much under the radar. I think Leo Cullen has done an extraordinary job. So, like, if Leo is still there, and I think it becomes very important that he is signed on to a longer contract, that if he is there, I think you can manage whoever else you bring in, provided that they're the right person with the right fit. So there's a particular attitude that Leinster are looking for, and which is heightening skills all the time. A huge amount of personal development and leadership work, which Lancaster did. It's a big hole to fill. Yeah. So, that's a big search criteria to go and find a new coach.
The Leo point, I think, is kind of a little bit understated in all this. So there's a new chief executive coming in from Google. to Leinster to replace Mick Dawson. I think he doesn't start until next month, or certainly later in Q4, as they would say. Leo's on a rolling contract. And I can see if you're Leo, you want to wait and see exactly what the new chief executive is like. You want to size him up from a professional perspective and go, I can work with this guy long term. But at the same time, if I'm the new CEO, I'm coming in and going, I want Leo Cullen. I absolutely want Leo Cullen to be a bridge for now and into the future. And whatever job Leo wants in Leinster Rugby, he should be offered and given. So it's a big moment here. It's a big decision for the new chief executive to get right.
Well, whoever comes in as CEO in any organisation, in any sporting organisation, they could be big fans of the sport, but they may not know the awkwardness of being a CEO of a sporting franchise. And you need to have the rugby institutional memory, and that's what Leo has, but he has leadership as well. And look, I still think that he was under a lot of pressure himself when he came into the job. I think he's done an extraordinary job, and I think they would have liked to have won a couple of trophies last year and the year before. But notwithstanding that, he has kept Leinster at the top of the tree by shielding a huge amount of pressure off his coach, by manoeuvring, I think, a huge amount with Guy Easterby for their recruitment. I think they've done incredibly well. So if I was the new CEO coming in, it's the first contract you'd be signing up. It'll cost him, I'd say, but no harm in that either.
Yeah, okay. Keith, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Brilliant. Cheers, lads.
It's Keith Wood giving us his thoughts on the situation at the moment. We'll obviously keep a close eye on Ulster Leinster this weekend. We'll preview that in more detail with Quinny on tomorrow's show, and we'll look back on it on Mondays as well. I don't know. I just think that because Lancaster got so much credit, and rightly so, for instilling so much of the culture, Leo Cullen brought him in. Leo Cullen worked with him, and Leo Cullen will be along ideally next year as well.
Well, if Leo Cullen was to leave as well, that's a double body blow. Really interested to listen to Robbie Henshaw in his press conference the last couple of days. Talking about the leadership of Stuart Lancaster, how much the players fed into him and bought into him from the outset when he took over. Probably no surprise given his leadership qualities. But he was asked about Johnny Sexton as well, and I think he half jokingly suggested player coach for Johnny Sexton. Now, we've said already he's probably going to be too busy for the next 12 months thinking about the small matter of a World Cup. But
yeah, well, it all aligns nicely. The World Cup will be over after the quarter-final stage, more than likely. You give him a few weeks off and you pitch him back in as I don't know, Leo had already talked about him continuing his playing, so maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but
you do hold on to Cullen though. I mean, you do everything in your power to hold on to Leo Cullen.
Yeah, so
the blank checkbook.
The new CEO has a big kind of, let's just fix this first.
Yeah, it's a glaring thing though, because when you see Lancaster leaving and Cullen's contract is out next year, it really highlights the contract issue with Leo Cullen. Now, obviously, they'd have probably spoken about this behind the scenes as well. But as you said, Stuart Lancaster, let him go. It's 4 years. He's got 4 years with Racing. Plenty of time he's had plenty of time in Leinster. I don't think it's a 7-year itch either. I think he's had a good stint with Leinster. He's done what he needed to do, and it's just the next stage of his life. So fair play.
Paris is nice, it turns out. 8:33 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Here's some Kenny Cunningham goodness from last night. He was on talking about the crossword with Joe Malloy and Richie McCormick. Back with the sports pages after this.
You've got the crossword, which is exciting. Now, in a moment, we'll get the listeners' help on the answers that you haven't been able to crack yourself.
It's a bit embarrassing.
No.
There's a couple of hard ones I don't mind, Trump, but there's a couple of easy ones I know I should get.
Oh.
If I give you the easy ones,
don't be hard
people are going to think I'm an idiot. They won't be far off. But
can I get you to do something first, though?
I'll give you one. If you get it,
no, listen.
Then I know I'm an idiot.
Just hang on a second.
Go ahead.
I want you.
What's your IQ? Have you ever had your IQ, Rich? You have a reasonably high IQ.
140, 150, I think. Come here.
No idea.
Kenny.
So that tells me he's got an IQ. He hasn't gone searching. He knows he's smart. He doesn't have to prove it.
Can I just ask you a question?
What did you say? 140. Is that high? Is 140 high, Rich?
140 pretty high, yeah.
Come here. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
You only got into minutes. You could even get points for 140. The arse. No way you're 140 IQ. Go on. Woo, right. Come on, Joe, going off air in 5 minutes.
Right, I know there's one there that you got, and you're quite proud of yourself that you got it.
No,
so
not
just
really.
let me finish.
No,
I want
never
you
said
to
that.
give us the clue and see if me and Richie can get it. One that you got already. Give us a clue that'll test me and Richie and see if we can match you.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Now I wouldn't be bad on, I suppose, geography. No, the basic geography.
Get on with it, Kenny, will you?
All right. I'll give you one. Body of water off the northeast coast of Australia. 5-3. Best of luck.
Well, the 3 is sea.
Yeah.
What's the 5, Rich? Off the north what of Australia?
That's a 143 IQ for you. 3 letters, C. Northeast
Tasman.
coast.
No, it's Jesus.
Yay! That'd be
Good Lord.
South. That'd be South Australia.
Was it 5 and 3? Is it?
5 and 3. Sea, obviously. Something sea.
The northeast coast. So you're heading up towards Asian, Malaysia. I'm telling you these because it's actually
Indian.
No
That's
clue
Indian
whatsoever.
Ocean.
Indian Ocean.
Go on,
Your
give it to
IQ's
us.
gone down by the
General
by the
knowledge
second.
isn't reflected.
Coral
on
Sea.
no.
You were not going to
Coral.
get it.
Come on.
There
Okay,
you go.
and you got that.
Yeah.
All
Like
right,
I said, it's just one of them.
Give us another one that you got then that you're happy with.
I'll be happy with. I'll tell you what. I'll give you these. Right, here's an easy one for you. Like just to get his a serious setback. So between the two years, right, you're on the buzzers, you two, right? A serious setback. 4-4. Serious setback. 4 and 4. Oh yeah, it's a. Oh, that was a real. What would you say? A hammer. What? Just to give you a hint, trying to help you out here. Have you got a blow? Like where does a boxer take a blow? Oh.
Body blow.
Hey, well done, Rich.
Nice, Rich.
Well done, Rich. Thank God you got that. Not a chance. Joe be here till 12 o'clock tonight. You wouldn't have got that.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
Yes.
no.
Right. So we got a letter, old school letter, posted. It arrived with in a jiffy bag. Dear Ger, I thought I might add to the sports tat and memorabilia that adorn the shelves and walls of your off the ball studio. I mean, I'm already on board because it is tat. Most of it's tat. Yes, the Limerick themed photos are shameless flag waving on my part, but if you can look past that, one is a world famous Hollywood actor wearing a GA jersey, and the other is a League of Ireland team playing Real Madrid in the European Cup when such fixtures were possible in the pre-Champions League era. So I'll just show you. This is obviously. I mean.
Oh yeah. Great man, Bill Murray.
Who doesn't like a little bit of Bill Murray? A party animal, Bill Murray. And then the other thing is it's a postcard from European Cup, first round, first leg, Limerick versus Real Madrid, Lansdowne Road, September 17th, 1980. Kick-off 6 p.m, obviously, because they didn't have lights, probably. Or maybe, did they have floodlights in? I don't know. But the thing is, right, so this arrived in the middle of last month, and we're finally getting around to putting it up today, because there's a documentary about that game that we're going to talk to the maker of, and actually play the documentary out on the show today as well. So incredibly appropriate that it should arrive. And also, as for the VHS case of K Sarah Sarah, I need not sell the reasons as to why you should get that on the shelf. Never pass a charity shop. The video cost me 50 cents. It's the case, obviously. We don't need the video. Have you ever seen this?
No.
Oh, it's definitely
fan of videos though.
It's definitely worth the watch. It's the official World Cup 90 video.
Brilliant.
A vague recollection of it being given out free if you bought, like, so everybody got new TVs in 1990 because up to that point you were like renting TVs. They were so expensive, and then everybody was like, no, the World Cup's out, we're getting a good TV. Like it you know, you can trace back the birth of the Celtic Tiger to the Jack Charlton. It's actually like the massive amount of money that everybody spent to make sure that they weren't going to be left behind. There were pubs charging in to watch the games at one stage, and then it was like, you can't do that. They were trying to get the investment that they made back in the big screen.
It's a bygone. It's an era where Nathan Murphy, I think he says, he used to sit outside the video shop in Ballyhonus and sit watching stuff from outside through the window.
Oh, little latchkey kid.
Yeah. So a bygone era.
Anyway, big fan of the show and your passionate coverage of all sports. I hope you can find it in your heart to put them in your studio. Place them behind Joe and ask him to do a shout out to me and feed my ego on one of his Sunday paper reviews, my favourite segment on OTB. Says John Sheehan from Limerick. I don't think Joe's going to do that for it. He might. We'll see. But certainly all that tat is very welcome, and we're going to put it up. So, John Duggan is with us at 8:40. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how's form?
What's going on?
Not a lot, to be honest. Quiet enough. Ordinary time, waiting for the North London Derby on Saturday, and then the Manchester Derby on Sunday, and the Arc on Sunday afternoon with Luxembourg the favourite for that. So they're the kind of things in my head, lads, at the moment, more so than what's happening today, which is the Dunhill Links with Rory, Shane, Padraig Harrington and Jonathan Caldwell involved.
Rory's tune has changed a bit, has it?
A little bit of peace now. But he said that before. And
he said it before and then he ripped into them the next day.
Yeah, so Rory has such no filter that a lot of what he comes out with, it could be anything from one day to the next. Now, I'm not saying that he has been consistent in his line, but sometimes he does swing back a bit. And then another time he's absolutely ripping them to shreds. So I'm kind of tired of talking about it, to be honest. I know it's a big deal, but I suppose all of our time is spent now talking about Liv when... I don't know if you saw that Bryson DeChambeau awful video doing the rounds of him. I think he hit a rope last week or something, and then he makes a joke with like in a real frat boy way of getting under the rope. It's just
a dose. What a reaction! Yeah. What an overreaction. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just poor.
You'd rather talk about the burger scene in Dublin, John? I know that.
I would. Yeah, I would rather talk about burgers than Bryson.
He was talking about the burgers last night.
Yeah, he's a big Bunsen fan, Kenny.
Yeah, but his Dash is his new thing.
Dash is his
He's got a new flame.
Yeah.
I had a Dash for the first time about a month ago, and it was amazing.
All right, so you're on the Dash train too?
Massively, yeah.
I didn't realise there was more than one of them. I thought they were exclusive to Capel Street. But
there's one on Kevin Street and down around near Wexford Street there.
Right, that was the one Kenny was in.
Yeah,
is that good, is it?
I was in the Capel Street branch.
Right.
And I blew my head off, to be honest. I've kind of gone off having fries with burgers. I just had the burger.
The hand-cut fries I like with burgers. The Bunsen hand-cut fries, all right. If you could describe the burger to me, John and Dash.
It was a lovely bun, first of all. And it is a smash burger, so they got to smash it down. There's a way of doing it, whatever way the juices are cooked through the burger. So it's quite, it's smashed down with the thing. It wasn't too greasy, which I really like with the burger. Good texture, good flavour. And you felt that you wanted another one after having the first one.
That's the problem, isn't it?
And that's why I've kind of gone off fries.
But like, I can see how you would. I'll just have a little second one.
Yeah, and not having the fries helps you have the second one. No, I didn't have the second one on the day, but I felt to myself, if I'm going to go back here, I'll have a second one.
And I don't think anybody should judge anybody who has a second burger.
No.
Who is anybody to judge anybody else in this world anymore?
Each to their own.
Well, that's it. And given especially that I was carrying a lot of condition for the last few years and kind of lost that condition, I put a little bit back on, but I understand conditioning in the burger sense. So, yeah, you can definitely easily fall into temptation of having a second one.
Overnight, the death has occurred of Coolio, who was 59. Is this a culturally significant moment for you, JD?
I remember it being in school. It was like 17. I think it was 1995 when Gangster's Paradise, that song came out, and I just remember we all.
Doing your leaving cert that year?
Yeah, around that time. I did the 96. Did my leaving.
Right.
I remember we were all in the kind of the common room, as it was called in school, and we were all now getting out of uniform. So I just remember that time when we were beginning to become, we're transitioning from kids to adults, and it was a bit more of a cool atmosphere. And Gangster's Paradise was in the charts, I remember at the time. So would I've known the music very well? Not very well. I was a pirate radio DJ back then.
Right.
In the shed in Ballybrack. Yeah.
On what station?
On Coast FM, it was called.
Right. What were you playing?
More pop stuff, I would say, in 80s.
Rick Astley?
Probably a bit more. I was probably fancied myself as a bit more of an 80s alternative connoisseur than Rick Astley. But
so go on. What like? And are you playing vinyl?
Playing vinyl, yeah.
So do you have all that vinyl still?
No, because I was in a friend's shed.
Okay.
And it was a pirate radio station that broadcast around Dublin. It was on air for 4 years, 1992 to 96.
You must have had an on-air persona. Like, did you wear a hat and the whole lot?
No hat.
That would have been a good opportunity to start your branding with the hat. Yeah. But come here, an on-air persona indeed. What was your name?
Mike Anderson.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Mike Anderson.
It's a terrible name. Just absolutely terrible.
It's just a normal name. It's not even like a...
Well, it's not kind of Bob Soul or anything like that. It's just... We all had these names. Like one of the lads, my friend, he took one of his names out of the death notices. So... that's how it kind of.
And we always Mike Anderson. You never changed.
I never changed. Never changed. It was like I was a teenager. I didn't know. I was young and irresponsible.
All the world is your oyster, and you're like, I'll pick Mike Anderson.
Yeah, this is a horrific name to pick, but that's
it's not that bad.
I think it's awful.
That is fantastic.
Wow. And would Mike Anderson ever make a comeback?
No, I don't think so.
Would you not do now Friday Night 80s on Today FM?
I actually offered to do one. I don't know how it worked out.
They politely declined, did they?
Yeah, I was rejected.
The email went into the spam.
Yeah.
Well, Coolio picked a good, his real name was Artist Leon Ivy Jr. So Coolio's a good pick. You could have picked a one-word kind of...
Well, the good thing about Mike Anderson, it was MIC, so...
okay. This is the plot thickens.
Yeah. I used to go to Phil Cawley all the time on Friday Night 80s and just chat to him and almost like, would you play that? Would you play that?
On air?
No, well,
you were like one of those. You were like one of those girls, the DJ box, going, play something good.
Yeah, because I'd be going between producing shows and going in there and Phil. Would you play the 12-inch of I don't know, Furniture's Brilliant Mind or something like that? My 80s is quite an alternative.
Jeez, I thought I knew you, John, from working with you for the last couple of
nobody
years.
knows. Nobody
I don't know you at all now.
People are just we're all icebergs here. You only know the surface of a Shane or a Ger or a John.
We are all multitudes, I believe, is the phrase du jour.
Wow. The Coolio story, of course, that we all remember from the sporting sphere was the Ger Connolly one.
Sorry, there is a link bringing up this.
Yeah. So that the quotes. He was at Leopardstown a few years ago. I think this was 2019. Yeah, when Ger Connolly was on his exodus from Dublin football. And Coolio's quotes: "If I saw him, I'd say, Ger, look, they want you to come back to the team, man. They need you. Dublin is counting on you. Come on back and do what you do. If not, he should try some American football. I'd like to see him do that either." Went on to say, maybe they'll let me and Dermot on the offensive line and we could try out a few plays together. I'd love to try play Gaelic, but I'm way too old. I'd probably get broke up. So just the fact that Coolio had a take on Dermot Connolly at the time was quite interesting. It's also made me nostalgic. Coolio's passing for Keenan and Kell. Great show in the mid-90s. Keenan being the smarter of the two mates, and Kell was kind of the idiotic foil. And Coolio did the famous and very, very catchy theme tune for that show. It was a classic. Who loves orange soda, I think was the great line from it. You lads are looking at me like I have six heads here.
I remember Keenan and Kell. I actually wasn't really into the show that much. I thought what was the Good Burger thing? What was that? Was that after or before?
Colin might know.
We don't know. Okay.
After.
Okay. I have a vague recollection of that period.
Yeah.
It was Dangerous Minds. It was the movie, wasn't it?
That's
Coolio,
right. Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah. About was it Going Straight or something? I think. But I kind of missed out on that Coolio thing. But may he rest in peace. Sad news.
Real 90s nostalgia. Coolio, he brings back. He's been doing the kind of the circuit, the festival and college circuit in recent years. Not really a fall from grace, but I know he's done different colleges around that sort of thing. A little bit.
Didn't he have a row with the was the Talking Bollocks lads, or certainly he was in the building recently and took exception to the suggestion in the style of Damien Duff, Sleeping Giant.
Right, yes.
Giving it to Johnny Ward. He gave it to the lads, but I think he might have fallen asleep in the middle of the interview as well. So
yeah. But it makes it more interesting from their perspective, I guess. An interesting interviewee.
Yeah.
But sad news to wake up to this morning.
Yeah.
You a Coolio fan?
Well, I mean, the song was.
It was your vintage.
The song was.
As we walked through the valley of the shadow of death.
It was everywhere, right? And it survived, but it's definitely like one-hit wonder territory.
Yeah, 100%.
So
he won a Grammy, I think, Coolio as well.
For that or for something else?
I assume for that. Don't quote me on that, but he definitely won a Grammy.
What would be on your Pirate Radio then playlist, lads?
Anything that was on Fanning Fab 50 from 1993 to 1996.
My music tastes are too wide and varied. I'd listen to Fleetwood Mac. I'd listen to Willie Nelson, Luke Combs, Chasing Abbey. I have absolutely. There's no link to my music tastes. But a lot of rap. I'd listen to a lot of rap as well. My younger brother got me into the rap big time.
You said Kenny Rogers?
No, not Kenny Rogers. Willie Nelson.
Saw
Willie Nelson live in Austin a couple of years ago. Quite an experience. That type of music. I'm a big country fan. No, not a Garth Brooks fan. I know Ger with the checkered shirt this morning and the Garth Brooks appearance a couple of weeks ago. You'd be more of that vintage. But I have no. If someone asks me what's your favourite type of music, there's no pinpointing it because a little bit of everything, lads.
And are you still into that stuff, John?
The 80s.
Mike Anderson.
The Mike Anderson genre.
I love 80s music, like Depeche Mode and you know, the Smiths, that kind of music. I was listening to Specials the last few days, big into two-tone. Yeah, no, anything unusual.
Did Mike Anderson talk like you talked, or did Mike Anderson?
No, Mike Anderson his voice hadn't broken.
Right, wow. And did he have a Mid-Atlantic twang on purpose?
No, I don't know. I hear it's now Tori Amos.
I was going to ask for an impression, but thankfully it came readily.
And are there any tapes extant?
That's a good question. I might try.
You should put them up. Yeah. Social media goal, JD.
Well, yeah.
All about them clicks.
Yeah, the Blackboard Jungle was enough. I think that was enough.
How far did you get?
Not very far. We messed up the buzzer round the second time.
So 2 rounds?
2 rounds, yeah. It was pretty shameful.
We were probably on the same season, I'd say. I was leaving cert. Were you leaving cert or 5th year?
I think it was in 5th year. Were you on it?
Yeah. We were
how far did you get?
Beaten in the first round.
Right.
By the eventual champions.
Did you do the specialist topic?
I didn't do the specialist topic.
Yeah, I did sport and I did okay. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
5 out of 6 or 6 out of 6? 6 out of 6. Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Did I do the specialist? I don't think I did the specialist round. But no, I definitely got one wrong that cost us. And Ray Darcy screwed us out of it.
Yeah.
Took the first answer when your man changed his answer in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And we got beaten by that 1 point deduction, actually giving us those 2. We would have, St. Peter's of Wexford won it. And I remember at Freshers Week bumping into the guy from the winning team. They won the minibus.
Awkward.
Sickened.
What would your mastermind subject be, Ger? I want both of your answers in this, in fact.
No idea.
That's a question
it would have to be
adults
something,
need to know.
It would have to be like something circa 88, 89, 90 when I was at my most. There's nothing in my life except these little tabs that you push up and down to reflect the position of each team in the league.
I think I'd have to pick the Apollo moon landings or else the Easter rising.
Shoot player ratings for Stan Collymoore's career while at
I like it.
Bradford before he moved to Forest.
Yeah. John, you're bound to have an interesting one.
US presidents maybe, or maybe, I don't know, sporting years.
Cheltenham Festival from...
Sporting years.
Sporting years.
Always when I was younger and trying to impress people, I go, well, just give me a year and I'll tell you anything.
I can't remember anything that happened in any specific year ever. So I can't tell you what, I eventually I'll be able to work out 2017, okay, so I know the Dubs have won something that year, but which is that the year of the own goals? Is that the year of the GPS?
That's the year of the GPS. That's the year of the GPS. 117 to 116, yeah.
And so Galway win the hurling?
Yeah.
Who wins the FA Cup?
You see, I think Arsenal won it that year, did they?
I don't remember anything about the FA Cup anymore.
I do remember that the hurling was 26 points to 217.
It's encyclopedic kind of.
It's Galway beaten
Waterford.
Okay. Right, there you go.
But the FA Cup, it is funny though with your brain cells and alcohol. The most recent years get harder.
Yes.
Than the ones.
That's not that funny. It's traumatizing, and also that's a direct correlation.
Yeah.
John,
all right, lads.
John, good stuff. More from John Duggan on Saturday afternoon and Off the Ball on News Talk, of course, from 1 o'clock to 5. Make sure you're tuned in. You can get him on Twitter as well. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish today at 8:53. We're live on the line now with Galway's own Katie O'Brien, who cruised to victory in the final of the PR2 single sculls at the World Rowing Championships in the Czech Republic last Friday. Katie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. What does it mean to feel like a world champion?
What does it mean? It means everything, I suppose, because it's what I've been working towards and dreaming of for the last while. So yeah, it means a lot.
You absolutely crushed the field in the final. It wasn't close. How does that bit where you're like, this is going okay, things are going well? When do you begin to enjoy it? Is it actually when you finish, or is there a little minute beforehand where you're going, I'm going to win this. This is great.
No, it's not until you cross the line, definitely, because it's funny, it really felt like she was so much closer than she actually was. Like I was sure it was only, like a second or two off. So I was kind of pushing right up until maybe 1,500 metres into the race. And then I could see, I was like, okay, there is a bit of water between us there now. So I'm just going to hold on here now and not push it, because I was afraid if I kept pushing, then I'd lose it. So I was just kind of holding on then for the last 500 metres, just hoping that gap would stay the same.
Sorry, go on, Ger.
It's not a short race. It's 9 minutes and 20 seconds. That's a long time for you to be alone on the water with your thoughts. In this case, crushing your opponent, but also that psychology of that, when to push, when not to push. I mean, most sports people, the key moments happen really quickly, but yours must happen a little bit in slow motion.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, in fairness, you'd have a lot of practice, really, like doing race pieces and things. So you are in some ways used to it. But yeah, like it is a lot of time to think. Like you've nearly got full 10 minutes to think. So some of it is spent, just thinking about the next stroke and thinking about what you'd planned to think about. You have planned. Like I would always break the race down and kind of have a plan of, this 500 meters are going to do this, the next 500 meters are going to do that. But obviously your mind can stray and you can start thinking about other random things. But yeah, you are like, I would have raced Kat, the Australian, back in 2019 when she won. And, when she won, I think she would have been maybe 30, almost 30, if not more seconds quicker than me then. So when I was, beating her, and it was kind of, you'd have moments of just being like, wow, this is great. This is what I'd hoped. Because, you don't know, you train a lot by yourselves, and there isn't many para rowers in Ireland. So it's kind of, yeah, how you're improving all the time, but you've no direct comparison of, is she improving all the time, or how are her scores, or how are her times. So like, yeah, you put the work in, and yeah, you hope you're up there and that you're going to be up there with the best, but you don't actually know till the day on the water. So there's a bit of like, oh, this is great, this is going to plan. So yeah, you do be thinking about that kind of thing as well.
Kat Ross, who you mentioned there, Katie, the Australian, like she's been very dominant, and I know you've been wanting to beat her for some time, and physical presence as well in the water, and Paralympic champion and all that. So how did you manage to I guess plug that gap from 2019 to now? Because beating her on this stage is quite an achievement.
Yeah, like she's an amazing athlete, and she's actually really lovely as well, and she'd be very supportive of all the other athletes, because I suppose because para rowing is a bit of a minority sport, we all kind of support each other, and I suppose bridging the gap really was just consistent training, and I didn't let it slip. Even through COVID, I stayed training. I didn't let it go. When I heard 2020 World Champs were cancelled, when I heard 2021 World Champs were cancelled, I didn't let it go. I took my 2 or 3 weeks off at the end of the season, but I just kept training, and every time that the goalposts were moved, I just kept slogging away. And I think it's just that consistency really, and having the support of Galway Rowing Club. They were there the whole way. Whether I was training with the junior 16 girls, whether I was training with the masters, whether I'd still find a boat to try and chase down the car up. So I was getting my pacing in, I was getting my training in, and then the last few months with the coming up to competition, obviously training with Rowing Ireland and doing race pieces with them, getting you in that racing form. I suppose all that had a big role to play, and coaches and all that, just keep your head straight, and yeah, just to keep working really. And I just kept tipping away, and thankfully it all worked out. Yeah. I
think when I last spoke to you, Katie, it was yourself and your brother Cian, probably the outset of COVID potentially, but I remember you talking about the importance of Clarenbridge to you, and I even saw on your Instagram, the homecoming there in recent days. You had the Camogie team and the local Sculwara, and even your neighbours as well from Stradbally, and it must have been quite special. Even the last time we spoke, I think you mentioned it, that when you were living up in Dublin, how buzzing you'd be to be driving back home into Clarenbridge. So it must have been quite special to see that welcome in the last couple of days.
It was unreal, yeah. When I drove past the primary school, all the kids were out with, they'd all made Irish flags, and they're all out waving them. And I remember being a young one in the school, and different things happening, being out there with your flag, and you'd be so excited. So it's so funny to be on the other side of it. And yeah, then coming up to the top of the road, and sure, all the neighbours that I've known, I've lived here since I was 6 months old, so I know them all so well, and it was amazing for them all to be up there, and there was such a buzz, and it was class. And actually yesterday I went into the primary school, and it was pandemonium. All the kids were just roaring, and they'd all made me signs, and I got photos of them on my phone there. They're unbelievable, all little drawings, and all really personal messages. It's class, so it's, again, Clarenbridge is just an unbelievable place, and everyone is just so supportive of anything that anyone does. So yeah, it was really cool. It was really, really cool.
There must be something in the water in Clarenbridge. It seems to be pretty good at sport.
Yeah, plenty good hurling anyway, yeah.
Occasional footballers too.
That's true.
Come here, what difference does this now make for your plans for the next couple of years in terms of the Olympics and all that kind of stuff? Because obviously, as you said, with COVID, there wasn't an opportunity for you to really test yourself as often as you want to against the world's best. But now that you've done this, does it change anything? Were you already headed towards the Olympics anyway, thinking, right, my plan is set, irrespective, this is a staging post? What does it do for you?
So unfortunately, the single isn't a class at the Paralympics, so it has to be the double. But thankfully, I found a rowing partner now, Stephen McGowan from Roscommon. So we also competed in the double sculls there at the Worlds and placed in 5th, which puts us in a really positive position for trying to qualify this time next year for the Paralympics 2024. So really now I'm kind of tunnel vision on the double and trying to get that qualified for Paris 2024. You know, it's like the single is always something I wanted to do, and because I've put so much time into the single over the last few years, it's great to kind of tick that box off. But yeah, now it's kind of laser focus and moving on to the Paralympic dream and not just the World Championship dream.
And does it help with funding as well from Sport Ireland? Pardon me, and even...
Yeah, that'll be the hope. You know, now that we've shown that we actually have a bit of, you know, there's promise there that, you know, we aren't just 2 people in a boat, that we've shown that we're up there with the best. I mean, in the A final there, all the boats that we were racing have been at the Paralympics. Some have medalled at the Paralympics. So, you know, we're right up there with the best, which is really, really good. And obviously, like, you know, there's still time for other crews to enter and other countries, other nations to put up crews against us too. And obviously everybody's going to be working hard over the next year, but it's still really, really positive that we're already up there, you know, in the top 5 boats in the world at the moment.
And what,
so, you know, it's positive for us. Yeah.
You talked about the gap in the singles that you had to overcome. What's the gap in the doubles that you'll need to overcome to get into the medal positions? What was the winner? How far behind the winner, for example, were you in that one?
So I think the winner was an 8:24 maybe, and I think we were in 8:36. So it's a 12-second gap. So, you know, like at the start of the year as well, we were racing the very same crews and it was a 20-something second gap. So we've already half that gap. So the hope would be, you know, over the next few months, we can do the same again.
So you're on track. What's it like to be part of this rowing team at the moment where, like, literally everybody seems to be world class? So I'd say it's a double edge where it's like, oh, geez, I better not let this team down, but also look at this team I'm part of.
Yeah, no, to be honest, it's only positive. Like, I can't explain how buzzing you'd be to see your other teammates doing so well, like, because you know what work and what hours they've put in, and you've all been through that slog together, and you've all been, you know, the highs and the lows before it, and it's just the total appreciation for what they've done, and then to see them reap the awards is unbelievable. There's kind of an electric atmosphere around when crews are doing so well, and it's just such an inspiration for yourself as well, like watching the other crews on the podium, just being like, wow, like, you know, that's so cool. I really want to do that myself. So yeah, it's just total inspiration from the rest of the crew, and they're also just really lovely people. Like, I've made some unbelievable friends. Like, I've known some of them obviously before this camp, but some I hadn't. And like, we all got on so well. I had so much crack. Even just training is good fun, and sitting around having dinner is good crack. And then obviously the nights out after were brilliant too. So yeah, no, they're a lovely bunch to be a part of, and absolutely just so lucky to be part of such a cool team.
Yeah, the women's fours, even like such an inspiration, all 4 of them. Even at last weekend, just incredible what they've been doing over the last couple of years. But Paul O'Donovan and Fitton McCarthy as well. Like, I mean, Katie, like, Paul, what impact does Paul have on the rest of the team? Because I mean, if he was any more laid back, he'd be lying down. But it obviously leads to the rest of the team maybe being probably more relaxed, because he is so relaxed and has that kind of influence on everyone else.
Yeah, he's genuinely such a sound lad. He's really, really, really nice guy. And I always would have great chat, you know, over dinner with him. Yeah, he's such a good example of how to do it, really. Just go in, get the job done, and walk away then with your medal. So yeah, if we could all embody Paul's relaxedness and success, it'd be a great thing.
Your background as a veterinarian as well, Katie, like, how have you been managed to balance that with the rowing? Because obviously both fairly time consuming, you'd imagine. Yeah, so up until February I was working full time out in Tuam, Galway, in Canavans, and I had to step away because I couldn't keep it up. You know, I went part time as well for a while, but it's just so demanding, especially then coming up to competition there.
You know, like it was too much trying to fit in 2 sessions a day and also do it, like, you know, I felt like I wasn't giving either my best or full attention. So I ended up in February then stepping away from it. I'll definitely be going back to it. I absolutely love veterinary, and, you know, I had great crack out in Canavan. So I'll be looking forward to getting back to it, but it probably won't be for the foreseeable until I'm kind of take off the rowing and finishing with that.
And are you like every animal vet? Are you like, is it kind of pets coming in, or is it farm? What type of veterinary is it?
So in Canavans we were mixed practice. I did most of the smalls. You know, if a farmer came in then with like a lamb or a calf, you know, I'd try and help them out a bit with that. But I was doing mostly smalls in Canavans. But it is a mixed animal practice vet. They do absolutely everything. Yeah.
Okay, so that obviously is requires massive brain power, but I guess it's also something that as you build up your experience, you just get better at, and you become more comfortable as time goes on. Is that the value of the experience?
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think having, you know, mentors in it as well are really important. So, you know, they were great for teaching you and helping you out with cases and stuff. But yeah, definitely something you just become more and more comfortable with. And, you know, I only worked for just over a year. So, because I only had finished college just previous to that. So,
right.
Yeah, like I have a year under my belt now, which is great, because I think if I hadn't worked, I'd have been a bit anxious, being like, oh God, can I actually be a vet? But yeah, no, it's great to get a year's work done, and I can I'm happy now that, you know, I have the basics, and going back to it hopefully isn't too difficult.
I was going to say, because there's a lot of conversations that we've been having over the years with athletes who chased the Olympic dream and did nothing but chase the Olympic dream, and then got there and were like finished, and we're like, yeah, that was amazing, but then immediately afterwards we're like, oh, what's next? Whereas you now are totally free, like, because you have something to fall back on. And I know everybody's athletic journey is their own individual journey, and you can't say one size fits all, but like yours is a great model where, you know, keep training in whatever career you want to be in, while at the same time being as good an athlete as you possibly can.
Oh yeah, in fairness, I am delighted now that I did my degree and kind of have that there in the back pocket. You know, it's great safety net that, you know, when this dream does end, you know, I have that, and it's another dream. I mean, when I was a young kid, I always wanted to be a vet, so I'm in a seriously fortunate position that either road I go down, I'm going to be very happy on. So yeah, it's great to have it in the back pocket, and yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you had the background as well, Katie, in horse riding, I know as well. Like, was there ever a decision to be made? I know, speaking to you before, the 2012 Paralympics were a bit of a turning point for you, but was that a tough decision to kind of choose rowing over other potential sports?
I think it was actually made quite easy, because when I was doing horse riding, I was kind of doing like cross country or show jumping. So the Paralympics doesn't have either of those events. The equestrian event is dressage, and it wouldn't have been my favourite aspect of horse riding. I've done very little of it, and it's very difficult. So yeah, it wasn't really for me. So then that kind of ruled that out. And so yeah, I went up to that sports day in UCD where they had all the Paralympic sports, and tried rowing and was asked back. So that was kind of just, it wasn't really a conscious decision. It kind of just happened, and yeah, so.
So it's a talent recruitment day that you saw advertised and decided, I'm going to go up.
Yeah. So myself and my dad were watching the Paralympics, and I actually emailed them with him while we were watching it. I found the email and the date. It's so funny. It's literally in the middle of the Paralympics, 10 years ago this month. And we sent the email, and I heard back from them 3 weeks later, and was down at the Paralympic Talent Search Day 3 weeks after that. So it all just kind of fell into place, really, you know. But yeah.
Well, that's mad, isn't it? Like, you know, a teenager gets inspired by watching something on TV, and it changes the course of your life.
Completely, yeah. Like, had we not sent that email, I probably wouldn't be rowing, and like, I didn't really even know what rowing was. And yeah, I was just completely inspired by watching the Paralympics in 2012. And I didn't even, like, I was into horse riding at the time, and it wasn't, you know, that, like, even in the email I said, it's not that I definitely want to do horse riding, I just want to do the Paralympics. So, you know, like, that's how you know, I suppose inspired you can be as how your mind works as a young person, that, you know, watching something like that can change the direction of your life.
It's the very definition of can't see, can't be, and it's why representation matters, and it's why coverage of your sport really matters, because it can inspire future generations. And, like, you know, I mean, I don't think maybe we don't talk enough about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think now, it's amazing. I'm even wearing the jumper, but her sport are doing such a great job for women in sport, and they really are putting us into the putting women who are doing so amazing and have been doing so amazing for so long. They're finally kind of in the limelight, I suppose. And athletes like Katie Taylor, who's one of my biggest inspirations, and Sunita Pastore, one of my biggest role models. It's great to see them getting recognition for what they're doing. And yeah, I suppose. Like you said, just having those role models, it's amazing what influence they can have on people. So yeah, it's really important.
Do you understand that you're one of those now?
Well, I that'd be amazing if that's true. But yeah, that'd be class.
Well, it is totally true because like Paralympics, pardon me, definitely needs its ambassadors, and you seem comfortable being an ambassador.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose when I was younger, there wasn't a huge amount of Paralympians in Ireland that were, again, being seen on TV and that. So I would hope that even if there's one person or one child out there that I can, some way kind of show what's out there for them, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Even
within the family, Katie, I know you're a bit of an inspiration to your brother Cian as well. He said it on record many's a time. And Cian obviously had to retire from rugby fairly early because of concussion last year, but I'm sure the level of sport is still discussed quite widely in your house, and Cian is very proud of what you're after achieving as well last weekend.
Yeah, he's buzzing. Yeah, they all are. Sure, Mum and Sean and Evie, they were all out there, supporting me, and it makes the moment so much better having them there, because it's because they've seen the work you put in as well, and they know how much it means as well. And having the people you love the most in the world right beside you when you're doing what you love is unbelievable. My best friend as well, Roisin, she didn't tell me she was coming out, and when I was on the podium, I literally looked up to the crowd, and there she was. I literally nearly collapsed. She surprised me. So yeah, it's little things like that, having support from friends and family, that make it all so much nicer and so much better. So yeah, it's really good.
Well, listen, enjoy it, and congratulations. It's a stunning achievement, and it doesn't feel like it's the end at all. It feels like it's the start of something magical. So best of luck.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
It's Katie O'Brien there, fresh from gold in the World Championships, and obviously we'll be keeping a close eye on the evolution of that time and closing the gap on the doubles. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. We're back after these with Cian O'Connor. He's the director of Sit Down and Shut Up, his short documentary about Limerick FC's famous match against Real Madrid in the European Cup at Lansdowne Road. Can you see that there? Yeah, you can, yeah. In September 1980, and we'll also show the documentary at the end of the show today after our chat with Cian. First though, here's the new EU Super Featherweight champion Eric Donovan with Joe last night, talking about climbing his own personal Everest and winning that fantastic bout at the weekend in Belfast. Back after these.
Is that the most exciting, wild, eventful fight you've been part of?
Look, 30 years after walking into a boxing club, I had my greatest night in a boxing ring. Justification for me. All this turning professional at 31 years of age, a month before my 31st birthday. Some people said, what's he doing? I was 3 years in retirement as well. People wrap it up at 31. Some people are wrapped up long before 31, professional careers. And, I had to deal with a lot of that. I also had to deal with the setbacks and the losses, the big losses, huge losses, spectacular losses when you think about it. There's Alpha Barda and Ramirez, but... Yeah. Someone said if you want to achieve big, you have to be prepared to fall high, and there was times where I fell from a great height because I dared for high altitude success, and I got my Everest, so I'm very happy.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Coigig Pod on OTB Sports.
I need to do that more. Every time I say something about an Irish player, they just go and they kick my ass the next time, and they're absolutely brilliant. So
I'm going to ask you to start slating me every Friday just so that I play a bit better on a Saturday.
Felt like a classic Arsenal win.
I think they should be winning the league realistically.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. but this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 14 minutes past 9 this Thursday morning. Now, Sit Down and Shut Up is an exciting new short documentary about when Limerick FC played football giants Real Madrid in the 1980 European Cup. It's a David versus Goliath tale about the opera of football, the city of Limerick, and a game that very few people remember, but three men can never forget. The documentary had its world premiere at the Galway Film Fleadh last year, and I'm delighted to say that the award-winning filmmaker Cian O'Connor is with us now. Cian, good morning to you. How are you?
How's it going? Good to see you guys. If I look tired, it's because it's 4 a.m. where I am, but I'm very happy to be here.
We really appreciate you staying up for us. You're in New York.
Yeah. I just realised when Cunham said you're live from New York, I just realised how glamorous that sounds. But believe me, my life isn't that glamorous.
Tell us about this movie and when the idea to make a documentary about this game came to you.
Well, so I received funding for it from it's a Limerick Arts Bursary funded short film as part of Creative Limerick, and I received the funding for it in 2019, at the end of 2019. However, I suppose I got the idea many years previously. I went to school in Limerick. I'm from Kerry, but I went to school in Limerick, and I was in a taxi ride with a taxi driver, and the taxi driver was absolutely obsessed with Limerick FC. And you know how it is with Limerick people. Once you get them talking, they can't stop talking. And they started telling me all about the history of Limerick, from when Pat Nolan exchanged shirts with Kevin Keegan when Limerick played Southampton, to when Sam Allardyce started his first job for Limerick back in the 90s. And then obviously when Limerick played Real Madrid. And when I heard it from him, I didn't believe him. And then flash forward a couple of years later, I was in film school and I remembered it. That memory had flashed into my head. And I was like, did Limerick actually play Real Madrid, or is that some weird fantasy dream I had? I looked it up. When I found out it was true, I just couldn't believe that no one had told the story before and that no one had heard about this game, to be honest. So that's kind of what spurred it on. So that happens, right? And with any good idea, you're like, okay, this is definitely going to work. And then in many cases, you can't find good characters to tell the story because, ultimately not everybody is going to perform in front of camera. You, on the other hand, got pretty lucky and found that there were three brilliant stories and three brilliant storytellers ready to speak. Exactly. And the thing about this film is what I've realised is that, the three people we had, Des Kennedy, the striker for the team, Kevin Fitzpatrick, the goalkeeper, and Johnny Matthews, the left back. It could have been any of the players. Do you know what I mean? I met a lot of the players. I met a lot of the fans. The first thing I did was I went to Markets Field. I didn't know anyone, but the first thing I did was I went to Markets Field, and even then it was a hotbed of history, of people who knew about that team and who knew about Limerick and who kind of loved football. It was kind of something else. So I met Des in his garage, and from there it all opened up. But it really is something special out there. It's obviously Limerick is a sporting city. It's got the rugby, the hurling, but around that Markets Field, Garryowen area, it really is soccer. Soccer is key.
It's funny, Cian, because it's a film about a particular match, but in the end, it's almost more a film about the people of Limerick and the city of Limerick in itself.
Yeah, 100%. And when we were making the film, obviously Limerick FC were ceasing to exist. This was before Treaty United. And the main thing that stuck out to me was, you have a sporting city without a soccer club and how sad that was. But at the same time, it shows how strong that community is from the grassroots upwards, that even then they were still passionate about the club. And obviously with Treaty now, things are looking a lot better. But it certainly is a document of that time for me. How easy or otherwise is it to make a film like this? Because, it involves getting footage from the game itself. I guess there's a bit of digging to do to make sure you're allowed to use it and actually sifting through the bits that you want to use. I would describe it as kind of like a detective or something like that. You know what I mean? You're basically digging through things, leading things to lead somewhere else. in regards to the footage, I'm not sure how much I can say about the footage that we used from the game, but essentially a big worry of mine was, did UEFA own the footage? Who owns this footage of the game? But it turned out that they didn't own the footage. It was kind of lost in a continuum because it was such an old game and stuff like that. But even when it came to the other archive, you see a lot of stuff that was from a BBC broadcast about Pat Grace, which we only used a small bit of. We got that from Getty Images, but we only used a small bit, but it was more just kind of, you'd see these small shards of information that would kind of tell a greater story. Like, I also met some great archivists in Limerick who had just so much to see. And yeah, I'd like to say that when you see the film, it does transport you back to that era, 1980s Limerick, and hopefully the fun of that as much as anything. Like,
so were you always a historian at heart, or is that kind of something that you've uncovered about yourself while making this?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Were you always a historian at heart? Like, are you naturally drawn to something as old as this, or is that something you discovered about yourself making this movie?
I don't know if I'd be a historian at heart, but certainly for me, once you have a good story, you want to tell it right. And I think this film would be nothing without the stories of the three lads. You know what I mean? I think those guys were really what made it human, and my job was really to present them in the best light and to get their story out there, because we see a lot of sports documentaries. A lot of sports documentaries can be quite similar, a bit by the books, but the difference is with ours is that you have these three guys who, Des Kennedy still works in his garage. Johnny Matthews is still working in his job. They're still real guys, and they really make it because they're so genuine and they just love telling the story.
Can you tell us a bit about the match itself? And not to give too much away, but the match ends up getting played in Lansdowne instead of in Limerick. What's behind that?
So essentially, it was very controversial at the time. What you had happening was it should have been played in Thomond Park or Markets Field, but Thomond Park was known for a lot of pitch invasions. And as a result, back then, UEFA, if there was a pitch invasion back then, the game would be completely called off. And so because of the fears of this, as well as perhaps, some people behind Limerick FC being a bit greedy at the time, they thought, if we put it up in Dublin, we can probably get more from the gate receipts and we won't worry about the pitch invasions. But this turned into then a protest because the Limerick fans were not happy with this. And it ended up, it's not mentioned in the film, but there was very few people at the game. Apparently the atmosphere was shocking. But obviously in the film, you don't want your atmosphere for your big game to be shocking. So we kind of left that out. But that's how it is. And we also got George Hamilton to do the commentary. He didn't comment on the game. However, he was at the game. So we were able to chat about that, and he re-recorded some commentary afterwards.
Right. That's mad that so Real Madrid couldn't draw a crowd, even amongst the Dublin football fans.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I think back then, keep in mind, football wasn't really shown 24/7 on TV like it is now. And so as a result, most of the teams that people knew would be Liverpool or Nottingham Forest. These were the teams that people wanted to see from the Dublin crowd. No one really knew who Real Madrid are. And Des even says it himself. He didn't know who they were, just that they were this great team, But those guys treated the game like any other game,
Was there anything else that kind of surprised you about when you started digging that you're like, hang on, this is mad?
Certainly, to be honest, the Pat Grace snack box KFC stuff, because I'm a snack box man, I won't lie. I'm not really a spice bag guy. I'm more of a classic snack box guy. So
that's the correct answer, by the way, Cian. That's the correct answer. Well done.
Well, I was always intrigued by snack boxes and how the hell that thing came to be in Ireland. And I wanted to do a documentary on that secretly in my heart of hearts. But then I found out that Pat Grace, he invented the snack box. He got the KFC licensing. He opened Chicken Hut in Limerick, and there were lines out the door. And that was kind of, it was just very intriguing for me. And I also learned when filming how a snack box was made, which is shown in the film in grisly detail.
What's your favourite thing about the snack box, Cian?
I'm not sure. See, I'm in New York now, so there's a lot of really good fried chicken here. But the thing about a snack box is, the chips, the chunky chips, mixed with the breaded chicken on a Sunday morning, or Sunday evening, not morning, Jesus Christ. It's more the vibe than the actual taste.
I want to hear this. This is the next documentary. Like, we shouldn't put you off doing that one. I think
I'll go for it.
Definitely do it.
We'll see about that, lads. You know what I mean? If the story is there, I'll tell the story. You know.
The game itself the result could have gone more famously for Limerick, I guess. Cian Des Kennedy, the man you spoke to, had an early goal, but sadly, that's not the way it panned out.
No, and I don't want to get into it too much just because we have the film, but the guys played the game of their lives, and a lot of that was because Owen Hand was the coach. They were a League of Ireland winning side back then. You know, for the Champions League, it was an open draw, and Limerick had won the League of Ireland, and that was down to excellent talent, but also excellent coaching and excellent fitness. I think that's what kind of caught Real Madrid off guard from the get-go. They weren't just a minnow that backed down. They immediately kind of played the game, but you know, at the end of the day, Madrid's fitness were probably a bit higher, and also there was a dubious penalty decision which is featured in the film.
It's funny, Owen Hand and his relationship with the Irish footballing public, it obviously sours after the Ireland job, which is unfair because, you know, he helps build a lot of what Jack Charlton ends up bringing to success. And so he's an interesting character. Kind of, this is in some ways the peak moments of him that get him the Ireland job eventually.
I'd agree with that totally in regards to how, I wasn't alive back then when Ireland played under Owen Hand, but I would certainly agree that he built the foundations with the Ireland team, Jack Charlton's Ireland team, and he had them playing really well. And I met Owen, and he was really lovely to talk to, but I personally wanted to keep it with the players and have their perspective. Do you know what I mean? But Owen was brilliant to chat to.
Yeah. What are you working on now, Cian?
At the moment, I'm in New York. I'm working on a short here in New York. I don't want to get into it too much, but I am thinking of going back into the old fiction, sports fiction. It's just a case of finding the right story and one that kind of interests me as much as anything. Because if you're not interested in the story, it probably won't be an interesting film. What
was the vibe you got, Cian, from chatting to Limerick people? Like, Limerick is obviously a sporting mecca in Ireland in many ways. Like, you've got the rugby fans, you've got the hurling, and I guess soccer in recent years has taken a back seat, but I'd imagine the soccer faithful in the county and in the city particularly are quite loyal.
100%. And we see that with Treaty. You know what I mean? Treaty were started in 2021, and it's a supporter-ran club made in the wake of Limerick FC's demise. And I think the whole, you know, I'm sure you guys have chatted about Treaty before. They're currently in the semi-finals of the FAI Cup, and the support group behind it is absolutely insane. You know, people want a soccer club in their city, in their county. And I was just at a fundraiser for Treaty in New York. Dara Fitzpatrick, which is Kevin's son, he started a fundraiser to get membership going because it is a non-profit club and to kind of bring people together. And even in New York, there are people who gathered who want to get behind this. And yeah, I mean, their aim is to just bring soccer to Limerick and the Midwest and give young people an opportunity to play and be coached. So that's my answer to that anyway.
Can I just ask you about, as somebody who's interested in telling stories, I'm interested in, like, so you said you were born in Kerry, went to school in Limerick. Yeah. Is soccer your own first love as a sport?
So I film is my first love. You know what I mean? I grew up in Kerry, which is sport mad. I used to hate football. I won't lie to you. Do you know what I mean? Because I was a film kid. But I got into soccer later in life, to be honest with you. When I was editing and making films, I found myself watching the Champions League in around 2017. And I kind of found a newfound appreciation for the sport in general. And it sounds pretentious, but I was able to kind of see, the opera behind it. So my perspective on the soccer in this film, that's why there's animation used. I wanted to kind of capture the cinema sport of soccer and the almost ballet quality, because I always say my favorite part of a sports game is the ending when you see the players and their reactions rather than the goals,
I totally agree. There was a period where in the GAA, for example, you used to be able to get into the winners and losers dressing rooms after every match. And then they realised that, like, no other sport's doing this anymore. What they do in soccer is they put everybody in front of an advertising hoarding, and then you get film and you get the branding. And now they still do it in America. In professional sports, you can walk into the locker room and talk to anybody who will talk to you. And I think a little bit of the magic is gone. But I'm just interested in your perspective as a storyteller about League of Ireland and the stories that exist there. And still, as a country, for whatever reason, we're not quite happy to support this league, which is our own people who grew up here, who played football here, who are a representation of our football culture. I don't know if you've thought about that at all, if it struck you that...
Yeah, I mean... When I started telling my friends about this story about when Limerick played Real Madrid, my friend from Athlone immediately said, well, actually, Athlone Town played Milan and they beat Milan in 1955. You know, that's just an example of the other history. But even beyond that, you have the football today. I mean, we saw that wonderful Dundalk FC side from a couple of years past. And throughout making it and from meeting the supporters who go to the games every single week, it's a pity that we don't talk about League of Ireland enough, and it's a pity that we don't talk about the great history of these clubs that we have and really embrace it, you know, because the best thing about soccer is the communities. It's about coming together and going to the games. And I don't know how you'd fix that. I don't know how you get people going to games or watching games, but there's potential there, do you know what I mean? And there's a potential to bring people together, you know?
Well, I think telling the stories of the history is actually going to be an important part of that, and getting people to think that they're part of a continuum that has incredible history, like the stuff that you've excavated. So, listen, you've been great with your time. Thanks so much for getting up in the middle of the night. We'll let you go and get some sleep. And congratulations on a great film.
Thank you very much. Can I just say the title is in reference to Stand Up and Fight, the play about when Munster played the All Blacks. I decided Sit Down and Shut Up would be the Limerick FC version of that. So
very good.
Thought I'd give a bit of trivia.
Yeah,
thank you very much, guys.
Thanks
Absolute
a million.
pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
That is filmmaker Cian O'Connor live from New York, and we should have just said as well that we're going to play Sit Down and Shut Up in just a moment. A reminder, Adrian and Aisling are in tomorrow in studio. Premier League back this weekend. Huge games in both the North London and Manchester derbies. So Daniel Harris and Martin Lipton are going to preview those. Alan Quinlan will preview the URC and much more of the evolving narratives. He'd already told us that he thought that RG Snyman might not be back this side of the November internationals, and it looks now like there's no specific date for his return at Munster, so that's not good. Anyway, a couple of quick comments. Powell74 says Chicken Hut, where all the real action goes on in Limerick at 3 a.m. Going for a snack box there could cost you a few teeth and get you a few stitches, but it was worth it.
It's always worth it for the chicken.
Geez, I remember that pack race chicken shop in the 80s, driving to Kerry when you actually had to drive through Limerick City. Pack races, famous fried chicken, best tasting meat on the bone. Was that
Is that it?
I think so. Somebody can correct me on that. Shifty Lad says inspiring stuff with Katie O'Brien, the Galway girl just sending that email to change your life. Sliding door moments. Well done, Katie. Great segment, lads. Mark Farrelly, how are you, Mark? Says Kel loves orange soda.
Yeah, that was the answer to who loves orange soda. I'm going to go back and watch that show now after Coolio's passing. I think there's going to be a bit of a resurgence for it, and maybe for some of his music. Well, Gangsta's Paradise, and maybe that's it. But yeah, bit of a resurgence for the late Coolio.
Patrick McHugh says I trekked Kilimanjaro, hugely underestimated by people. It took me 4 days up, 1 day down. I was physically exhausted. Ascended at midnight, got there at 6 a.m. First ones to do it that day.
But that's one thing about Kilimanjaro, people do underestimate it because they hear of people doing it. And I remember even chatting to Stephen Ferris before, who did it, and like, he's a fit man in good shape and he found it very tough. It's not easy, and anyone undertaking it, I would say prepare for it, get the right gear, and certainly do a bit of training. So well worth doing though. Like one of the
you can't just rock up. I've seen people who maybe might not have the fitness profile of you, the marathon runner.
Well,
who just rock up and do it, but no, don't do that.
No, definitely not. You need a bit of training. And the funny thing is, like, the altitude is the real danger, the altitude sickness, and sometimes if you're overweight or not in shape, it can play into your hands. Like the altitude can affect different people in different ways. Fitness doesn't really play into that, so you can get lucky in terms of the altitude sickness. But that's the real danger. That a lot of people take these tablets, Diamox, to thin the blood before they do it.
All right.
I kind of staved off that and tried to do it naturally, but yeah, it's something not to be underestimated if you just decide to do it, which a lot of people in Ireland do. You know, a lot of people from this country seem to climb it every year. So
JP Wright says whatever happens with Kenny, he has to be credited with bringing through the youth and believing in them as opposed to sticking with the dinosaurs. The players will learn from the Armenia game. Coy big, right? And then OTB adores Kenny, says Will. I never heard them cite, well, look at the standard of player during McCarthy's last reign. Mick McCarthy kept picking our lads. Yeah. He did. Yeah. He was loyal to those players who were, scraping a 1-0 win against Gibraltar. And he couldn't make Matt Doherty and Seamus Coleman be in the same team because he tried it for half an hour in a gale force wind and was like, oh, that's not working, that's a disaster. It's like, and then the second half is also a disaster, even though he still didn't do it.
Yeah.
He barely picked Matt Doherty. Like, he just couldn't get his head around the available talent and picking the best players. He needed a big lad up front, and that was it. There was always going to be a big lad up front because, well, that's how football was played in his day. And there's, this harken back to Mick.
The divide between Irish fans is really surprising. Well, it shouldn't really surprise me, but the Kenny in and out seems to be split right down the middle. There's not, even in my friend group, it's fairly split down the middle. But which is quite remarkable that. But as you said yesterday, people are probably entrenched in camps and sticking to them.
Yeah, and look, that I guess that's how sports fandom works. Aaron McConville says Chris Houghton was what he had, or was that your typo? That was his typo, yeah. Chris Houghton is an amalgamation of Ray Houghton and Chris Houghton. There's one of several alternatives as the new Ireland manager. I mean, like, do you really want Chris Houghton to manage Ireland? Like, he's a great fella, like a really important figure in Irish football, but I'm actually not convinced that as an Ireland manager, I don't know.
No, we need a proper style of play. Like at least Stephen Kenny and the lads, you said it a few nights ago on the show as well.
There's a chance he will be our next manager, by the way. But
okay. Well, yeah.
You know, the list of candidates who have senior managerial experience and the profile to do the job, but I don't know.
It's a small enough list, but whoever does take the job after Stephen Kenny will have to be thankful for where he's taken the team. The chimes of positivity, and you heard it from Darragh O'Shea yesterday after the match as well, that the players are fully on board, which is half the battle. It doesn't really matter what the rest of us think as long as the players are on board. That's all we want.
Steve Lane says, let's go back to scraping past Gibraltar and championing grindhouse horror draws away to Georgia as fantastic achievements then. Grindhouse horror draws.
That's part of our DNA.
That is the best description of Irish football for the last decade.
Sums it up.
That I've seen.
Yeah. 3 words to sum up Irish football.
Sometimes the YouTube comments deliver you diamonds and sometimes they deliver you pig shit. And that was the diamond and a bit of the pig shit side by side. 9:36 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, please leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or you can WhatsApp us. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We're back tomorrow. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effort to finish your day. Sit back, relax and enjoy this, or sit down and shut up. The Limerick FC documentary directed by Cian O'Connor. Here it is.
Here's a chance for Nodwell with a free kick. And up goes Kennedy. It's off the head of Perez Garcia. Duggan's up there, and in goes Kennedy. And Des Kennedy has got the breakthrough, and Limerick lead. Des Kennedy has put Limerick in front against Real Madrid.
Today, the future of Limerick FC was put into serious doubt. An examinership process to keep the trading company afloat ended without success. A liquidator is now likely to be appointed, and the club will not play in 2020 because it was not granted a League of Ireland licence. Now, this wasn't a major surprise.
My name is Des Kennedy. I was reared in Garryowen, which is not too far away from here. I wouldn't call myself a celebrity. I was one lucky guy that played for Limerick at the right time and scored a few goals. Being honest about it, it was just another game. I was playing against Real Madrid.
I'm Johnny Walsh. I played with Limerick for 18 continuous seasons. We didn't really win much, or they didn't. But, yeah, football was my life. When I heard that we were drawn against Madrid, we couldn't believe it. Because it was Madrid and they were one of the top European teams.
It didn't frighten me, but it gave me a huge, we're going to play in the top team in Europe.
I don't think we would have beaten them in our wildest dreams. It was a different ball game.
So the club was run totally by volunteers. So the whole committee, chairman, etc., they were all volunteers at the time. Now, Real Madrid were an absolute giant, probably the most famous club in the world. I mean, even at the time, they'd won 6 European Cups. It was a huge deal.
Oh, it was unbelievable. There was a great buzz around town about it,
Hello and welcome to Lansdowne Road, and what a game we have in prospect today. Limerick in the blue and white, and Real Madrid in their iconic all-white strip. So Limerick get us underway in this European Cup first round, first leg match.
Match was kicked off. I went up to my position centre forward. The German centre half called Stielike was knocking me. And he started pulling my hair because I had long hair at the time. And he started spitting at me. He said to me, any more of that now, I said, and I look after you.
He accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally, caught Stielike.
Bang there from Des Kennedy, and it looks like he's going to have to stay up. Yes, Francisco Pineda.
He broke his nose, so he went down.
We clashed for a header.
In those days, I think you got away with a lot more physicality. I think centre forwards and centre halves had to let you know they were there.
I could look after myself.
I heard another story that you actually hit the other fella who came on. Is that true?
No.
That's a lie.
Well, I won't say it's a lie. We clashed as well, yeah. But that was an accident also.
Limerick rock solid at the back. Owen handles them so well organised.
It was unbelievable, really. If a stranger came in and watched the game, they could tell there was clearly a difference in class between the two teams, but they'd be saying, why are Real Madrid wearing blue?
I don't think anybody expected this. What a half by Limerick.
They were going nowhere because we were defending so well. We always felt we had a goal in us.
He used to say for a long time that it was a volley from outside the box. Like I don't know if you've seen the footage of it, like, but and I have.
Here's a chance for Nodwell with a free kick.
We got a free kick. I peeled off. Dougie went the header.
Duggan's up there.
Went to kick it in, and Benanza hit my shin.
In goes Kennedy, and Des Kennedy has got the breakthrough, and Limerick lead.
He scrambled the ball over the line, is what I'd say. Like.
What a moment for Des Kennedy and for Limerick Football Club.
I was kind of disbelief. I said, has that gone in?
I was jumping up and down, so I was. We were 1-0 up against Real Madrid.
The acclamation comes tumbling down for the West Stand at Lansdowne Road. Des Kennedy has put Limerick in front against Real Madrid.
It's a waste of a good stadium now.
It is, isn't it?
But people would come up here on the Sunday and the same crowd, except when we were doing better, then the bigger crowd would come.
Yeah. But that's what it was, a day out then, wasn't it, for them?
Day out.
Up, have the game, watch the game, have a few points with home, their pals.
That's it.
Go home and start working Monday morning.
Absolutely.
And once we won then, you see, they were happy and cheerful.
I suppose Limerick in the 80s, not unlike anywhere in Ireland, you had recession and you had unemployment.
This was all before things picked up in the 90s with the Celtic Tiger. So all you had really was your sports and a few points.
Limerick itself, I suppose, was battling a bad reputation in the background of all of this. It was earning itself the unenviable moniker of Stab City. And it was becoming seen as almost like an Irish answer to Compton. I think the soccer just brought that bit of a lift.
They were the best team in the country, really, at that time, you know?
It was no surprise that the vast army of travelling Limerick supporters invaded the pitch to acclaim their hero. For they were champions of the League of Ireland for only the second time in their history, for the first time since 1960.
These are great times for Limerick and a great time to be mayor.
Good, solid defence from Limerick so far. You'd have to say Real don't appear to be in their stride just yet.
Everyone said, like, right lads, look, just settle down now and just get back, concentrate on what you're doing and get back into your shape and the whole lot again.
We attacked again, we kept attacking, and we were doing very well.
I think certainly in that second half we were dreaming of actually beating them in one leg.
This is Hernandez.
I remember there was a call for the ball and Kevin came out.
Oh, and he's picked out the run of Pineda.
The ball was running wide.
Oh, he's brought him down.
Kevin put his hands out to block the ball.
And I think the player kind of dived over Kevin Fitzpatrick.
I don't know. Did he dive? Maybe he did. We always said before, if you come for it, you have to win it. And he didn't win it.
Irish guys, if you're the tackle, they can fall, get up and get on with it. But these guys were diving left, right and centre.
Extravagant tumble by the Spaniard, but the referee has bought it and Real Madrid have a penalty. And it falls to Kevin Fitzpatrick to face Juanito from the penalty spot.
When the penalty was going to be taken, I always moving, that I would go left like that or right like that before I go.
Juanito against Fitzpatrick.
Hoping that he might see my movement.
With 20 minutes to go.
We were really just hoping and praying that Limerick would just hold on.
And it's 1-1.
It was a real kick in the teeth.
Frustration for the keeper, frustration for Limerick.
But hopefully we can hang on and at least get a draw. It's the least we deserve.
Looking at everything that's happened and looking at Limerick over the past couple of seasons, we all know this needs a very, very fresh start, and maybe a year out or maybe a bit of time out isn't the worst thing in the world. But one thing is for sure, Joe, I've met a huge amount of people who are badly hurting over the decision to have no senior soccer next year.
Even though we played Real Madrid, the club was not well off back then. It was being financed by Mickey Webb and Pat Grace.
Pat Grace was a local businessman in Limerick. He was very well known for his originally Kentucky Fried Chicken and famous fried chicken.
Hey man, you want a funky bird? Well, let me tell you, we got some of the tastiest birds in town.
He had a monopoly. He had the market. People would queue for an hour to get a snack box.
I don't know, was the foundations of a good club ever put down? It's one thing bankrolling it, but you also need to have a plan for the future.
Since Pat Grace, we've had quite a few different owners and investors who have come in with the best of intentions, and we've had some good years, but unfortunately now the financial situation is not good.
Football drama on Shannon's side continues. Last month came the news that Limerick FC's days as a Senior League of Ireland side looked at an end.
It got to the stage after the penalty, we were really just hoping and praying that Limerick would just hold on. You could tell the players were struggling on the pitch. Real Madrid had really upped their game. They were really turning the screw, and we were really nervous in the stands.
I can't remember who it was, tackled and gave away a free.
Owen O'Mahony's just been a bit clumsy with the challenge there.
We lined up our free, which was grand.
5 minutes to go.
As we were getting organised, they took a quick free kick.
They've got to concentrate because he's taking it quickly. Pineda's in there and in again. And it's 2-1.
And you kind of knew then that you wouldn't get another chance.
We had done so well and we were really, really tired. And as I said, the concentration had gone, and that's what really caught us for a finish.
2-1 to Real Madrid, and it's ending just as it would have been expected to.
We were never going to beat Real Madrid. Do you know, that's the truth of it, even though it would have been something else if we did.
Really terrific by Limerick. They've defended so well. There can surely be no way back for Limerick now. Limerick 1, Real Madrid 2.
Even still thinking back, it was amazing to be on the same pitch as them.
I think in the latter part of my career, it was very hard to see the club go downhill. And even to see the city without a club now at the moment is heartbreaking. But unfortunately, I don't know how you change that unless you have loads of money.
My father brought me up when I was 6 in 1948. And I'm following Limerick football since then. And I've gone through the highs and the lows of it. It's sad, and I feel sad over it. You know, why can't we have a senior team?
I was privileged to play for Limerick. It was an honour for me to play for Limerick, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And the guys that were on the team, I mean, the banter that we had, the laugh that we had, the crack that we had, it was just brilliant.
I mean, we came so close to actually beating Real Madrid. That was some performance, that was some team, and they did our city proud. But you know, when you look back, would you miss it?
Yeah.
Huh? You'd miss it.
And in goes Kennedy, and Des Kennedy has got the breakthrough, and Limerick lead.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.